Anyone who grew up in the 2000s knows exactly what it means to find an alien watch that fell from the sky. Ben 10 wasn't just another Cartoon Network show. It was that collective fantasy of looking down at your own wrist and imagining turning into 4 arms when facing down the school bully. And let's be real, anyone who says they never drew an Omnitrix on their arm with a pen is lying. A year ago, I made a Ben 10 video here on the channel, but to be honest, it could have been way better. So today, we're redoing it the right way. The original series, Alien Force, Ultimate Alien, and Omniverse. Ben's complete journey, from a 10-year-old kid to the hero of the universe. And the reboot? Look, this time, it's not even part of the conversation. Some things we just learned to leave in the past, where they can't traumatize us anymore. So sit back, because we're getting iconic aliens, the angsty teenage Ben that divided the fan base, and a whole lot more. Get ready for a nostalgia trip and dial up your Omnitrix, because it's hero time. In space, Vilgax, a buff alien squid, tries to steal some cosmic contraband and ends up turning into undercooked sushi in a test tube. On Earth, Ben Tennyson, a 10-year-old kid, is dragged on an RV road trip with his grandpa Max and his cousin Gwen, the very incarnation of boredom. Running away from a menu of grubs, he is almost crushed by a meteor that spits out a weird watch, and the alien scrap latches onto his wrist like a tick. Pressing a button, he turns into a burning rock man, and, with 0 brain cells, turns the forest into a massive bonfire. Vilgax sends his drones to fetch the watch, but Ben turns into a crystal alien and makes the giant robot swallow its own laser, blowing it to smithereens. The next morning, he leaves the bullies hanging by their underwear and drives off thinking he's the savior of the universe. Ben saves a woman from a fire, but his real focus is drooling over a golden cereal trading card. Far away, the pale scientist, Dr. Animo, mutates a frog into a giant monstrosity to swallow his own landlord and invades a supermarket where Ben, with a dead watch, improvises with a soccer ball. Animo escapes on a parrot, resurrects a mammoth and a T-Rex at a museum, and kidnaps Gwen. Ben turns into the smelly bug to rescue his useless cousin from the top of the Washington Monument and, in the heat of the moment, chooses between a shiny piece of cardboard and a human life, surprisingly doing the right thing, and sending Animo to the slammer crying over his prize. Ben takes a swim in a dark lake at dawn, and a colossal tentacle almost drowns him. Later, the gang bumps into Captain Shaw, a crazy old man obsessed with the Kraken monster, and Jonah, a rich biologist who locks down the area posing as a nature protector. Ben discovers the giant squid was just protecting its eggs, and Jonah reveals himself as an animal trafficker who blows up the boat. Invading the hideout, the protagonist finally turns into the shark-toothed fish and returns the eggs to Mama Kraken, who returns the favor by ripping the villain's submarine in half like paper, while Captain Shaw only catches a 10-year-old boy in wet underwear. Grandpa Max announces a weekend at Great Aunt Vera's retirement community, featuring pork-flavored gelatin for dinner, and Ben turns into Ghost Freak just to escape the culinary atrocity. Flying around invisibly, he catches the elderly acting like acrobatic demons, and even Aunt Vera turns into a robotic freak. When an army of rabid seniors throws a golf cart at Grandpa Max, his body regenerates from a green goo. Ben discovers the fake old people are the Limax, shape-shifting aliens who love the heat, and flexing his negative IQ, he turns into Heat Blast. When Gwen drops her squirt gun, they discover the goo's weakness, and he breaks a water pipe to send the rest of the puddle crying back to space. In space, the mutated Lord Vilgax hires 3 bounty hunters to rip the watch off the useless protagonist's arm. Fooling around as Diamond Head, Ben hits Gwen's sunscreen, causing it to spray right in her face. A cyborg crab named Crab hardens Ghost Freak, and Max runs over the flying alien 6-6. Tetrax, the 3rd hunter, kidnaps Ben, humiliates him for his lack of strategy, and reveals he is the exact same species of crude rock. When the others take Max and Gwen hostage, Ben turns into gray matter and yanks out the crab's nerve wires until it short-circuits. Tetrax praises the kid's tiny brain, gifts him his hoverboard, and leaves, leaving Vilgax foaming with rage. The family visits a circus, and Ben reveals a pathetic phobia of clowns, proving he's just as much of a wimp as you, before discovering Zombozo's freaks are robbing the town. The circus vanishes, taking Gwen and half the audience as snacks, and Max reveals Zombozo is an emotional vampire who feeds on people's joy. subway. Ben invades the mirror maze and finds Gwen shriveled up like a raisin. Driven by pure hatred, he decides his clown phobia is nonsense, turns into Ghost Freak, and beats the clown against his own happiness-sucking machine. When Zombozo plays tough, Ghost Freak peels back his own skin, exposing the abyss inside him. The sight is so disturbing that the clown soils himself and teleports away. Ben uses Ghost Freak to cut in line for sumo slammers. The family gets kicked out of the hotel, and he runs off to the arcade where he meets Kevin, an edgy goth kid who makes the machine spit out tokens with his bare hand.
This place is a ripoff, you know that?
You're right. The games here stink. Here, you owe me one.
Ben turns into Accelerate to save the goth from a gang, and Kevin takes him to his hideout in an abandoned subway station, since his family threw him out like trash for being a freak. When Kevin suggests derailing a passenger train to crash into a money train, Ben finds the limit of his psychopathy and refuses, turning into Heat Blast. But Kevin attacks from behind and absorbs his energy, turning into a half-fire alien. In the final showdown, Kevin touches 4 arms and gains extra limbs, but the time runs out and the defense system blasts the goth away, leaving him laughing alone in the dark with the remnants of the power he sucked up. Grandpa Max takes the grandkids to Sparksville, a tacky tourist town run by Mayor Earl, a guy with the personality of a door. Ben bounces a colossal rubber band ball around town, and upon touching it untransformed, the watch leaks electrical energy, spawning a megawatt, a tiny yellow creature that loves sucking up electrical charge. Ben slices it in half with a manhole cover, the dumbest idea possible since the Habs regenerate, and soon an army of flying batteries takes over a planetarium, piloting the structure like a cheap anime mecha. Heat Blast scorches the robot's hull and lures the critters under a tarp hiding the world's largest fishbowl, where they are sealed forever. The mayor enslaves them to power the world's largest light bulb, and Max dumps a bucket of water on Ben's head. Vilgax sends 2 drones to track the watch. A biker gang robs an armored truck, and when Ben sees the leader is a woman, his Virgin Night code stops him from hitting her. 4 Arms crushes the drones and throws the scrap in the leader's face, but the parts fuse into her flesh, turning the crook into a bloodthirsty cyborg, while Vilgax invades her mind and forces her to hunt the protagonist. At the hospital, the watch's signal attracts the cyborg, and Ben runs off alone to avoid getting his family killed. But he turns into Upgrade and merges with the villain's technology, getting his mind pulled into a cosmic video call with Vilgax. Scared out of his wits, he violently short-circuits the woman's system, returning her to normal. At a museum, a children's party magician cosplayer pins everyone to the ceiling to steal a spellbook, and Ben turns into Accelerate, snatches an amulet from the villain, and gives the consolation trinket to his cousin. The amulet starts giving Gwen absurd luck, turning her into a purple superheroine named Lucky Girl, and stealing all the protagonist's spotlight. Hex lures the idiots to a haunted mansion, gathers the 5 magical charms, and starts opening a black hole, bringing gargoyles and a minotaur to life to beat the crap out of 4 Arms. While the alien gets horribly beaten, the girl throws a simple pebble at the all-powerful villain's forehead, knocking the idiot out, and smashes the magical charms with a shovel, returning to being the same insufferable nerd as always. Humiliated by a "you must be this tall to ride" sign at a water park, Ben tries to turn into a giant alien but ends up as a tiny gray frog, and a crazy conspiracy theorist stuffs him into a cooler like a warm beer can. The nutjob wants to photograph the alien to prove to a secret organization that he's not just a basement-dwelling weirdo, and while calling his boss Sir Enoch, the little frog gets flushed down a toilet but still ends up delivered to the suits. On a laser surgery table, the betrayed conspiracy theorist himself frees the kid, and the two bump into Max and Gwen, already beating up the guards. Trapped in an alien technology room, the nano-alien turns on the central machine to cause an overload. The watch times out, and they escape before everything collapses into a miniature black hole, while Sir Enoch investigates who destroyed his base. Clancy, a bug-controlling terrorist, kidnaps the city councilwoman because they're going to demolish his crumbling building. Meanwhile, Ben catches a summer cold, and Grandpa tries to force-feed him a Chinese soup that would make a skunk vomit. Blinded by snot, Wildmutt runs face-first into a wall like a mentally challenged dog, and 4 Arms lets out a colossal sneeze, washing the councilwoman in gallons of green alien boogers.
Thanks.
Don't mention it.
At the nuclear plant, Ben tries to go heat blast, but spawns blue and freezing, squirting ice instead of fire, and shoves the villain into an ice cube, cooling the reactor at the very last second. When Clancy thaws out and invades the RV, the kid throws the stinky soup out the window, luring the bugs outside and leaving the guy alone to eat a punch from Old Man Max. In the end, the cousin sneezes, proving karma is unforgiving. Our favorite useless kid shows off as a rock man stopping an armored car on the highway, while the steroid-pumped octopus Vilgax steps out of his healing tank fully regenerated, crushes a medical droid just to prove his legs work, and decides to fetch the watch himself. Vilgax bombards the nearby city with his metal spheres. Ben turns into a walking bonfire, but the giant ignores all the heat and tosses him like trash. Max recognizes his old alien sugar daddy and tells everyone to run. Mid-air, Vilgax grabs Ben's arm, presses his button, and forces him back into his fragile child form, throwing him into a rolling sphere. In the underground of Mount Rushmore, Max reveals his arsenal and crashes the rust bucket itself to penetrate the ship, unloads a colossal cannon, and activates the self-destruct. Ben grabs the cannon, shoots Vilgax in the back, and flies away in flames, leaving the octopus buried under tons of exploding scrap. In a glorious 70s flashback, Grandpa Max shoots a sticky white rubber in Vilgax's face and finally admits he was part of a secret brotherhood of plumbers. Trying to prove his worth, Ben aims for maximum speed, but the watch glitches and turns him into a dehydrated fish, humiliated by a tiny bug, until Phil, Max's old partner, shows up with a colossal rifle begging to team up. At the Blind Beast's slaughterhouse, Phil blows a sonic device that subdues all the creatures, but Max, ignoring subtlety, stacks the animals in a freezer. Suspicious of the luxury hotel, Max catches the dirty old man intentionally freeing aliens just to get paid to recapture them, like an IT guy who breaks your PC to charge for the fix. Phil summons a beast. Ben arrives bursting with speed and deals with it, while Gwen fights for the null void projector, which vomits a tentacle monstrosity. Ben shrinks into a frog, mounts the tentacles, and forces Phil to crash his car. When the mercenary tries to banish him, Gwen pulls out a mirror and reflects the beam right into the traitor's face, sucking him into the existential void for eternity. Stuck in the woods, Ben tries to buy burgers with the watch and turns into Cannonbolt, an obese alien who can't stand up or spit fire, just curls into a ball and rolls around aimlessly. A meteor reveals a colossal red tick and 3 fanatics who worship it as a cosmic god destined to suck the earth dry. After embarrassing himself, Ben swallows his pride, turns into the fat ball, and deflects the fanatics' lasers back into their faces. Realizing the outside won't work, he rolls straight into one of the monster's damp orifices and bounces around its guts like a macabre pinball until the tick explodes in a bath of blue goo. The fanatics drop to their knees to worship Ben's great balls, but lose interest when he turns back into a disappointing child, and Max even forces his grandson to clean up the mess. Ben wastes his youth in a mile-long line to buy version 2.1 of a game he already owns. When a deranged 4 Arms starts demolishing the street, Gwen blames her cousin, but the hero tracks down the imposter and discovers it's Kevin Levin, the pint-sized sociopath who sucked the watch's energy and wants to ruin his reputation in a pathetic way. Kevin goes on a nationwide destruction tour and tries to run everyone over by controlling a train as upgrade, but Grandpa Max turns the RV into a rescue machine, and Wild Mutt saves the day right before they plunge into the ocean. Consumed by hatred on the bridge, Kevin loses control of his alien puberty and mutates into Kevin 11, a Frankenstein of all the aliens, until the soldiers fill him with lead and knock him into the dark water, which keeps bubbling mysteriously. Alien mercenaries single out Earth as a metal supermarket, and Vulcanus falls from the sky demanding ores nobody's ever heard of. Ben turns into 4 Arms but gets bombarded by 6-6 until the galactic enforcers arrive. Ultimos, the brain octopus Synaptac, and Tiny, a female of Ben's species dying to experience the vigor of his 4 Arms. On the ship, Ben commits the crime of offering chocolate to Ultimos, who passes out from pathetic weakness. The brain octopus angrily takes over and leads leads everyone to the steel mill, where Ben goes accelerate and Tiny ditches the mission just to fawn over her speedy crush. In the end, they toss Vulcanus into the hot metal soup and Ultimos offers a badge, but Ben prefers the open road over a weak-stomached leader and a crazy fangirl. Ben and Kevin trade punches and goo on a wind farm until a beam abducts them both to a gladiator arena run by Slicks, a sadistic robot who profits off others' misery. Slicks locks the two in a shared suffering shackle, and they only take down the giant Technorg by mixing fire and goo in a synchronized beatdown. Ben engineers a rebellion, goes gray matter, then upgrade to open the escape pods, but the transformation glitches and Kevin glues him to the wall with stinkfly slime, saving the pleasure of eliminating him for later. Stuck, Ben crushes his chest and turns into Cannonbolt, the only fat form Kevin didn't copy, and ejects him into the vacuum of space, leaving Kevin sweating bullets while a furious Technord comes back to collect on the betrayal. Ben tries to play the hero against gas station robbers and realizes his wrist is bare. We've fallen into a multiversal fever dream, and Grandpa Max beats the crap out of the thugs with a gas pump hose and a trash can, while the useless kid watches with a dumb look on his face. Ben realizes he traveled back in time to the day he found the watch, but Nerd Gwen gets there first, slaps it on her wrist, and turns into Heat Blast, writing her own name in the sky to humiliate her cousin. When a Vilgax drone falls from the sky, Gwen goes Diamond Head and slices the thing up, proving brains beat brawn. Vilgax kidnaps the girl to extract her jewel, and during the chase, a shock makes the watch latch onto Max's wrist. He turns into Upgrade, launches Vilgax into space, and blows up the ship, leaving Ben high and dry. Ben wakes up having wet the bed after dreaming of Ghost Freak begging to get out of the watch. At the preppy school Gwen dreams of attending, he acts like a rabid primate just to embarrass his cousin, but Zombozo's freaks invade the gym. Ben turns into Ghost Freak and beats the clowns with a sadism that would make a psychopath proud, until the creature reveals it wants to possess his body to rule the universe. At night, all hell breaks loose. Ghost Freak jumps from body to body like a cosmic plague, Max pulls out a sun-tanning gun, and Ben turns into gray matter to pull back the curtains of a clock tower, frying the freak in the sunlight until nothing but dust remains. An earthquake spits out the mask in Texas, and as soon as Grandpa Max lays eyes on the relic over a bowl of beetle soup, the old man flips out and forces his grandkids to steal the piece to find the city-destroying sword hidden within it. After a tank RV chase and a Mayan pyramid, Enoch pulls the ancient weapon from the stone with a victor's smile, but since it had been rusting for 5,000 years, it turns to useless dust in his hands. The boomer grandpa almost runs over a kid on the road, and a disgusting green fungus swallows the RV's engine on the spot. The pods scattered across the ground are organic warheads ready to infect the whole country. So how do you defeat an alien intelligence that sends telepathic messages about the end of the world? By dumping an entire bottle of foot powder straight into the monster's mouth and ending the day eating mushroom pizza just for pure sadism. A teenage goth breaks into a maximum security prison like someone strolling into the mall to free her failure of a sorcerer uncle, while the hero is dragged to a magic convention in Las Vegas.
Charmcaster, I've been waiting.
The gullible cousin becomes a doormat for the whiny goth and gets her charm stolen, until the hero turns into a thorny humanoid plant and sucks up all the goth's magic in one fell swoop. Grandpa takes the family to an underwater resort in the Bermuda Triangle because what could possibly go wrong? Alien robotic squids attack, and it turns out the genius billionaire just stole the creature's batteries to save on the electric bill. The entire resort implodes at the bottom of the sea, but the rich guy doesn't even blink and announces the next one will be on the moon, as detached from reality as you are. The protagonist with negative IQ decides to fix the alien watch by poking the hole with a screwdriver and then sticking the cover back on with chewed bubblegum. Standard procedure for high-end alien maintenance. Then Dr. Animo shows up with a giant steroid frog and steals the artifact. Grandpa turns into a disgusting human-mosquito hybrid until the cousin shoves the cover on the machine backwards and reverses everything. In the vacuum of space, Goth Kevin thaws out Vilgax, forming the alliance of rejects obsessed with the hero's wrist. The kid unlocks the master control and starts switching aliens just by thinking about it, but the chase throws both villains into the null void, and when the space octopus grabs a grenade thinking it's the watch, the portal closes, and the two idiots are trapped for eternity. A 2-bit hypnotist named Sublimino turns Earth's great savior into a crybaby, and the mental trigger makes the sleepwalking kid destroy the entire mall while snoozing. The hero ends up turning into a plant, ties up the phony villain, and steals the magic pocket watch from the tower. The next day, he tries to hypnotize his cousin into spoon-feeding him ice cream, and she smiles and agrees just to smash the frozen dessert onto the idiot's forehead. A portal spits out a masked woman who kidnaps Gwen, and the hero falls into a futuristic world where he's idolized like a K-pop star. The protagonist himself appears 30 years older, with the personality of a stressed-out bank manager, and the kidnapper is the cousin from the future, now a hipster witch named Gwendolyn. After Vilgax resurrects, the adult hero turns into a never-before-seen freezing lizard and freezes the villain in a pool. The little goth witch with abandonment issues returns and casts a body swap spell that hits the nerd cousin by mistake. The real cousin wakes up in Charmcaster's body, gets thrown in juvenile detention, and, wielding magic powers, incites a food fight and blows up the sewer drains to escape. In the final brawl, the witch misses her target and swaps the cousin's minds, but the hero returns each mind to its proper body. The family stumbles upon a frozen amusement park where a crazy old man decides Grandpa is the perfect incarnation of Santa Claus and traps him in a magnetic chair to enslave the elves. The air in the place starts mutating the grandkids into pointy-eared Christmas freaks, but the tiny kid crawls through the gears and blows up the machine. The curse is only broken when the presents are delivered, so he goes stinkfly and spits packages through the air. The protagonist drools over a Navajo girl named Kai Green when a space werewolf, the Yenoldushi, pops up on the roof. The watch starts flashing yellow, and the kid scratches compulsively until he gets furry blue feet and a snout, turning into Ben Wolf himself. Except the watch wasn't cursed, it was just sucking up the creature's DNA in capture mode. He saves the village but gets rejected by Kai, who only liked him when he was a pet to tame. Losing at sumo slammers to his cousin, the cheating brat hacks the console from the inside and resets her score, but a lightning strike throws them both into the game's code. He celebrates his own isekai adventure until he finds out the buff hero Ishiyama was the villain Kenko in disguise.
Ishiyama! How do you know my name, strange creature?
Kenko?
In the real world, Grandpa Max wakes up and pauses the game, but the gooey kid blows up the final boss and ejects himself and his cousin from the simulation, leaving the boomer absolutely addicted to the screen. The hero discovers his intellectual property was stolen, and his aliens were turned into a crappy cartoon starring Kangaroo Commando. A series of sabotages at the park almost turns into a tourist massacre, and the masked actor Abel accuses the cartoon's creator, until the cousin pokes holes in the accusation by proving the glove they found didn't fit the left-handed suspect. The big reveal is that the evil genius is Kane, the actor's bitter brother, a whiny animator who planned it all out of spite for not getting credits. A walking mummy scares some kids by cow-tipping, and Old Man Max dumps the grandkids at a farm camp so they can learn the value of hard work. It turns out the mummy is mining corrodium, a radioactive rock that mutates any living being into a monster. The creature touches the watch and unlocks the pharaoh DNA, but when it's time to test it out, the thing glitches, giving him the slime alien who merges with liquid nitrogen tanks to freeze the mummy for good. At a music festival in Chicago, a weatherman and his robot create a giant water monster that commits the unforgivable crime of destroying the protagonist's video game. Pouting because he wasn't taken to an anime convention, the kid is also kidnapped by a band that thinks he's their new drummer. When the psychopathic robot returns with a colossal water monster that swallows the crowd, the four-armed giant dives in, shreds an absurd guitar solo, and short-circuits the robot with his bare hands. Thugs try to steal the famous Liberty Bell in a truck, and the hero goes big-headed frog, causes an accident, and lands perfectly in a jar of jelly beans as a consolation prize. Later, at a kid's baseball game with the president himself in the audience, he discovers the opposing team is made of androids, and the real plan was to replace the president with a rubber android. The four-armed giant destroys the fake president and smashes the cybernetic coach into scrap, and from the wreckage, a lunatic in armor reveals this was all just another failed plot by the Forever Knights. In the Arctic, two idiots open a pod and unleash Xylene, a weird alien. At the park, she grabs Ben with telekinesis and demands the watch. Max arrives, and it turns into an awkward reunion of former colleagues. Xylene reveals she sent the Omnitrix to Earth after getting beat up by Vilgax. A giant Vilgax robot swallows Grandpa's rust bucket before exploding, and she rubs it in Ben's face that the weapon was meant for Max, not a whiny kid. The robot kidnaps the old man. Xylene unlocks Upchuck. Ben devours the whole canister like an all-you-can-eat buffet and saves Max. She leaves, but not before planting a wet kiss on the old man, traumatizing the brats. The mummy and the werewolf unearth radioactive ore in the dead of night like two workaholics. While the trio causes terror in traffic, Ben messes up the transformation, turns into Stinkfly, and ends up chained to inmates. Max destroys a whole bridge aiming a laser, and Gwen saves the day by trapping the fugitives in the water. Following purple lightning bolts that delay a NASA launch, they invade the command center, where the grumpy Dr. Victor recognizes the Omnitrix, and things turn into a Halloween monster brawl in a giant centrifuge. At the junkyard, Max muzzles the werewolf like a rabid poodle, and Ben gets one right by turning into Cannonbolt, but Victor reveals himself as a buff Frankenstein, launches the space shuttle with Max and Gwen locked inside, and resurrects his master, Ghost Freak, back from the dead to settle the score. Ben flees in desperation, but the watch turns him into gray matter, and he squeezes under the floorboards like a cockroach, while Max discovers the villain's plan to block out the sun and mutate humanity. Gwen bounces off the walls like a stupid pinball. Ben pulls out a sun gun and shoots Ghost Freak in the face. In a rare display of intelligence, Ben electrocutes himself, turns into Upgrade, and flies into space. But the radioactive beam hits Earth in a freak show. The Omnitrix then turns him into Frankenstrike, who beats up Ghost Freak in the vacuum of space, while Max uses the space shuttle as a demolition car and cures the Earth. The villain invades the ship to possess Ben, but the kid just smiles like a psychopath. Gwen opens the door to the sunlight and turns him to dust for the second time. Upon re-entry, Ben turns into Cannonbolt, wraps his family in his own flesh, and crashes like a meteor in Egypt.
And he complained about being smothered in my cooties.
The kid wakes up with a bugged watch and the day seems way too perfect, until troll copies of Max and Gwen reveal that everything is a Forever Knight's illusion to rip the watch off his arm. Enoch throws him into his worst nightmare, school, but the brat figures out it's his dream, turns on cheat mode, and becomes the glorious, upgraded Ben. Waking up in real life, he turns into Accelerate and shoves Enoch right back into the coma machine. Dr. Animo escapes from prison on a demonic pterodactyl, and at the beach, the watch delivers a new alien that, pulled by a mutant seagull, rips in half and creates a clone. Dubbed Ditto, he decides that one of him isn't enough and multiplies to play basketball with himself, testing Grandpa Max's last ounce of patience. In the end, he makes a whole army, breaks the Master Insect's wings, and hands Animo over to the cops. The senile wizard Hex steals water from the Fountain of Youth and turns Grandpa Max into a hyperactive brat. When the watch times out, Ben himself turns into a whiny 4-year-old excuse for a human. Overtaken by a baby's mentality, Heat Blast throws an epic temper tantrum, goes into a bratty supernova, and evaporates the entire fountain, throwing Hex into the puddle to turn into a diaper-wearing baby in the hands of his goth niece Charmcaster. Ben is tortured in a cursed tuxedo at the wedding of his useless cousin Joel to Camille, and Max drops the bomb. The bride's family is made of mud monsters, the Sludge Puppies. Ben turns into Diamond Head and drowns the slimy ex-boyfriend in a spa until the poor guy dissolves, and Heat Blast roasts the clay in-laws until they become ceramic statues. But during the dance, the little girl melts her legs and ruins Grandpa's precious tuxedo forever. While fixing a toilet in the rust bucket, the Tennysons are attacked by asphalt pirates in a cheap Mad Max parody, and the watch humiliates Ben by turning him into Ripjaws on a deserted highway, a literal fish out of water. The thugs steal the rust bucket and turn it into a war tank, but Ben uses his knowledge of the RV's annoying quirks to activate the ice machine and freeze the leader's face. Ben secretly wrecks Gwen's laptop and, to pay for the repairs, enters an underground wrestling tournament for the 10 grand, pretending to be Forearm's own manager. The watch fails and gives him the ridiculous Ditto, but the horde of clones hurls logs at the mafia boss's face and saves the wrestler's mother. Ben confesses his crime to Gwen, exactly when she turns on the intact laptop, proving she manipulated her cousin just to get free labor. In the future, the retired protagonist beats up Vulcanus and rushes to his son Ken's 10th birthday. Fed up with being overprotected, Ken runs away on a hoverboard and befriends Devlin, the son of the biggest sociopath in the series. The two break into the rust bucket and Devlin frees his dad from the dimensional clink, but Kevin 11 comes back uglier than sin and beats the crap out of everyone, even his own son. The protagonist wakes up fully pissed, turns into the giant alien, way big, and squashes Kevin like a bakery cockroach, while Devlin locks his dad up again and gets adopted by the Tennysons. Our gooey flying hero stops a bank robbery with the ease of someone breathing, while the freak show invades Fort Knox and instead of gold, steals alien scrap that they hand on a silver platter to the Forever King to assemble the -10. The rust bucket, hacked by the chubby nerd, flies out of control all the way to Seattle, and in the middle of a beatdown against the cyborg biker and the dark goth girl, the macaw villain escapes with the missing piece to power up a colossal alien battery. The rust bucket turns into an electric grill to toast the moronic villains, and Grandpa discovers that the medieval king cosplay leader is Driscoll, a corrupt former colleague booted from the plumbers for stealing alien contraband. While the chubby nerd hacks the steel doors with brain Wi-Fi, Driscoll pulls the supreme energy into his armor and turns into a pocket Megazord. Then, our hero uses his brain for the first time in his life and turns into the gluttonous alien, Upchuck, who swallows the energy sphere until he puffs up like a radioactive blowfish and spits it all out in a blast that disintegrates the villain and vaporizes Mount Rushmore. Our protagonist, addicted to weird watches, tries to defuse Dr. Animo's nuclear bomb with fiery energy and activates the Omnitrix's self-destruct mode, which will wipe out the universe.
The watch is going to destroy itself?
Along with whoever is wearing it at the time.
The crystal mercenary Tetrax lands in the backyard, warning that they have a few days, so they ditch Grandpa Max and fly to an intergalactic prison, where Ben beats up the muscular Myax thinking she was Vilgax, but the real one soon pops up demanding the jewel. The ship crashes, naughty plants pull Gwen by her tentacles, and Ben turns into 4 arms and cries like a baby until Tetrax rubs it in his face that he already destroyed an entire planet. They invade the base of Azimuth, a grumpy old toad who actually wants the universe to explode, but the cliché hero speech softens his amphibious heart. Azimuth fixes the watch and unlocks the Titanic Way Big, who grabs Vilgax and yeets him into the vacuum like space trash. The toad gives him the watch as a gift, and they return to Earth only to find them all overrun by zombies, because peace is a luxury this show ignores. Summer vacation is over, and our super-powered hero faces the worst villain of all, middle school. Forced to hide his powers, Ben gets drenched in milkshakes by bullies and still has to pick up dog poop in the yard. Then, killer robots invade dodgeball class craving the watch. Ben pulls a Clark Kent, runs to the bathroom, and comes back as Diamond Head to beat up the machines without anyone suspecting it's him. He gets home and finds Vilgax, the buff octopus, holding his dad hostage. He turns into Cannonbolt, rescues the whining old man, and the whole Tennyson family dishes out bullets on the robots while healing their traumas. Tired of playing hide and seek, he turns into Accelerate, rubs his secret identity in the bullies' faces, and lures the squid to the sewers, where he turns on the gas and strikes a match, blowing the villain sky high in a humiliating explosion. The family hugs, the bullies now idolize the kid, right until Dr. Animo shows up riding mutant beasts. 5 years later, Ben has become a teenage soccer player, until Grandpa Max drops off the map. He investigates the old RV, trades punches with an alien using a fire extinguisher, and proves he's still dead weight without the watch. Finding a message from his grandpa, he puts the alien collar back on and goes whining for help to his cousin Gwen, now a pink energy black belt sorceress. The two capture the grumpy alien cop Labrid and crash an illegal arms trade, where the Forever Knights are buying deadly toys from Kevin Levin, the former emo psychopath who absorbs any material he touches. Ben tries to play hero, but the watch updates mid-shootout and turns him into Swampfire, a stinky plant project that tanks shots to the chest, reattaches his own severed arm, and cooks the rogue emo with fireballs. With Kevin handcuffed, the crew drives to a castle, and Ben accidentally wakes up a furious giant dragon. Running from the mechanical dragon, the gang faces the Forever Knights. Kevin absorbs the floor in a shockwave. Gwen raises her little shield, and Ben turns into Echo, multiplying like rats. A knight tries to shoot Kevin in the back, but Labrad pulls the trigger first. The idiot insists and explodes into pieces, and Labrad pushes Kevin out of the way to save his skin, earning his respect. The army of Echoes lets out a sonic scream that obliterates the dragon and tears Labrad's suit, who falls leaking blue juice, throws the mission of saving the universe on Ben's shoulders, and dies.
Maybe you can find Max and save your planet.
I can't do it without Grandpa.
You are Ben Tennyson. You can do anything.
Motivated by the trauma, they track the bad guys to a mine. Ben puts on a DNA alien mask to infiltrate and turns into Humungosaur, but gets kicked out of the ship like trash. The hybrid takes off to vaporize the city, but Humungosaur grows to 50 feet and rips the laser cannon's wires, plummeting into a crater, only to discover that he scraped his human knee. The damage now transfers to his own body. Kevin promises to stick around until the end, forming the Unresolved Trauma Squad. A flying matchhead tears through the skies of a farm, gets hunted by rednecks, and ends up locked in a freezer with his plumber's badge confiscated. But he spits hot sap, melts the cuffs, and bails like an amateur. The dynamic trio finds him, discovers the poor guy is the half-alien Alan, and reveals that the crop circles are a giant circuit board that suited-up DNA aliens used to puke snow into the valley. Ben turns into Swampfire, teaches useless Alan how to surf on a rock through the air, and together they carbonize the monsters and bring down the tower, forcing the kid to play babysitter to the rednecks. The deadbeat rat Arjit promises rare tech to Kevin, who fixes Max's rust bucket just to steal the RV, but takes a hit of paralyzing spikes from his own partner and drops to the floor. The trio tracks the traitor and corners him with Echo, and Kevin, offended, runs off crying straight to Volcanus's lair, who straps him to a machine and forces him to swallow Tadenite until he turns into a walking crystal skewer. Ben arrives as Big Chill, shatters the brute's armor, and reveals the boss is a tiny, pathetic alien. In the end, the tech was just a hologram of Grandpa Max telling Ben to stop being useless and put together a team of plumber's kids. While Ben watches his grandpa's hologram on a loop, the group crosses paths with Michael Morningstar, a golden boy with a plumber badge who gives Gwen a handshake and leaves her melting, much to Kevin's jealous rage. Kevin breaks into the trash boy's house and finds out the rich kid is a leech who has hungry mouths on his palms and sucked all of Gwen's energy until she turned into a raisin. The pretty boy, pumped up on feminine energy, beats up Ben and Kevin, but Gwen refuses to be tossed aside, grabs the vampire, and sucks it all back, leaving him dehydrated and humiliated on the ground. An alien goo escapes from a ship and decides to ruin Ben's date with Julie at the pier, possessing bumper cars, a toy plane, and whatever else it can find to try and assassinate the phony hero. After a lot of beatdowns disguised with cotton candy and turning into a big-headed crab, Brainstorm, due to a watch glitch, Ben boldly reveals his secret, and the goo finally gives up, turns into a needy dog, and guides them to a crashed ship. There they find Bazel, the pet's owner, save everyone from a reactor about to explode, and the alien bails into space, leaving the dog as a freebie for the lovebirds. After Grandpa Max gets ambushed by a parasite in a roadside diner, Gwen and Kevin hunt for her missing brother and find him tied up in a sinister lab with a space squid glued to his face, turning the kid into a genetic zombie. The protagonist's watch finally decides to be useful on its own, cures the kid's DNA, and rips the squid off, and the group reunites with Max in the middle of the freak factory. The old man tells the kids to blow up the smuggling trucks while he faces the pale leader, and turns his weapon into an explosive that sends the whole city block to hell, leaving the brats in a crater to finish the job. The self-proclaimed King Patrick hands a colossal weapon to the useless Knight Connor to kill the basement monster, but the beast snaps the chains and flies out the stained glass window. The protagonist's team gets dragged in to help the Tin Can Knights, and in the clash, Ben turns into a walking crystal and realizes the beast just wants to talk, while cowardly Connor shoots at everyone. Turning into Spider Monkey, the protagonist swaps the broken translator on the beast's neck and discovers the terrifying dragon was just a frustrated space cartographer wanting his ship back, and convinces him to simply go home. At Grandpa's fishing hole, the trio spots a cloaked figure who evaporates, leaving a flower, sets up an ambush, and ends up getting thoroughly beaten by a mysterious woman with the same powers as Gwen, only on steroids.
For a secret place, this gets a lot of traffic.
Go away.
The redhead saves their skin and reveals the attacker is none other than Verdona, their lost grandmother, a being of pure energy who wants to kidnap her granddaughter for 70 years of training on a distant planet. Faced with refusal, the old lady decides to destroy her granddaughter's physical body to free the energy inside, assumes her giant pink form, and beats up the trio until Gwen uses the power of dialogue to convince her grandma not to commit family homicide. The protagonist turns into the puddle of slime goop to melt a combat robot, and kleptomaniac Kevin pockets one of the machine's severed hands for personal use. At the mall, Ben verbally humiliates the bullies Cash and JT, who take revenge by pushing Kevin's car off a cliff and stealing the robotic hand, but the alien glove latches onto Cash and controls his pea-sized brain. Kevin goes looking for revenge alone and takes the beating of a lifetime, turning into a modern art collage on the floor, until JT gathers the courage and uses the power of friendship to convince his buddy to resist and the glove to detach, leaving the forgotten delinquent screaming for help in the factory. Two knockoff space cops, the whiny speedster Helen and the four-armed Manny, go around throwing any alien they see into a black hole called the Null Void, thinking in their ignorance that everyone is a villain. They kidnap Kevin for interrogation and even toss the protagonist into the Null Void, but he turns into a walking pile of compostable trash and escapes the interdimensional prison. In the end, both sides check the database and discover the duo was shoving innocent plumbers' kids into the hole, and while Helen and Manny jump in there to clean up their mess, Kevin takes the opportunity to steal their gear. In the 50s, a nerd plays God with a quartz portal and gets sucked into another dimension. 50 years later, the trio breaks into the abandoned base and runs into an energy creature that ages everything it touches. The protagonist decides to punch the time monster and gets the ultimate punishment, turning into a grumpy old man, while the beast also rusts Kevin's beloved car. Enter Professor Paradox, the very same sucked-in scientist who became a Time Lord, and takes the team to prove the Earth will turn into barren stone if no one acts. Going back to the moment of the accident, they discover that the cowardly assistant Hugo is the monster itself. The protagonist turns into a buff dinosaur, Humungosaur, saves him from falling, and the redhead blows up the machine, altering the timeline and returning everything to normal, complete with a brand new car for Kevin and a passive-aggressive note from Paradox. A race of imperialist alien frogs invades Earth armed to the teeth because Princess Atea was kidnapped by the generic bounty hunter 77, and the obese bullfrog emperor threatens to blow up the planet if the useless team doesn't find the runaway. Following the amphibious royal sent to a dam, they bump into the hunter who destroys the dam and crushes Kevin's car for the umpteenth time, so the protagonist activates an untested divine transformation and turns into Alien X, a cosmic god who is completely paralyzed because his mind is now controlled by Bellicus and Serena, two entities that bicker like a divorced couple and never agree on anything. While the hero becomes the most useless statue in the universe, we find out the little princess wasn't a damsel in distress, but a sociopath who paid double to overthrow her own father. Atea takes the death ray and throws everyone in space jail, but the protagonist forces his two voices to let him turn back to normal, beats down the traitorous frogs, and promises to never become the cosmic god again, staying incompetent with his normal aliens. Kevin, at the peak of his genius, decides to stop a teleporter by throwing a rock at it, and the short circuit sucks Echo Echo and a Puritan hybrid lord straight to the desert of Turawusta. The racist alien finds Ben's human face so repulsive that he forces him to walk 10 paces behind like a mangy dog. And when Ben turns into Big Chill to cool the big guy down, he gets rejected just like you in high school. Night falls, Ben discovers his partner's name is Reinrasig III and decides to call him Reiny just to annoy him. Reiny loses his own hand to a bug, and Swampfire glues the stump back on with vines and goo, infecting the racist's purity for good. Upon reaching the teleporter, Reiny throws an existential drama fit and exiles himself in the desert to pay for his impure sins, leaving our needy protagonist to return alone looking like a fool. The team of knockoff plumbers storms a warehouse thinking they're going to beat the crap out of the Forever Knights, but fall like ducks into Magistrate Galil's trap, who rubs it in Kevin's face that he doesn't have a hero's bloodline and rips the stolen badge off the kid. Kevin spends the day whining until Gwen shows up in the garage handing him a little bag of marbles made of different materials for him to absorb, in a vibe of unresolved tension so thick they almost lock lips before a hybrid blows up the wall and ruins the romance. In the middle of the chaos appears Michael Morningstar, now Darkstar because he got beat up so much he turned into a malnourished zombie, sucking everyone's energy, until Gwen escapes and comes back, leading a mentally controlled army of aliens to beat the zombie until he begs for mercy. With the villain subdued, Galil magically changes his mind and hands out badges like candy at a kid's party, advising Ben that he doesn't need one because he already has the watch on his wrist, while Kevin runs into Mommy's arms to show he's become a golden boy. An out-of-control Humungosaur storms the Forever Knight's castle asking for Ben Tennyson, and it's soon discovered there's a bootleg copy of our hero wandering around stuffing his face with chili fries. The imposter reveals himself to be Albedo, an arrogant alien who claims to be the Omnitrix's creator and demands the watch back to stop inhabiting that disgusting human body. Since Ben refuses, the most schizophrenic alien cockfight in the universe begins, until the two smash their own watches against each other in an explosion that fries the copy's brain. Then the real Azimuth shows up to bring order to the daycare, unmasks Albedo as just a jealous intern, and locks him permanently in the form of that useless teenager he hates so much, sending the poor guy to a space prison. Out in space, the humiliated guy gets a green twig for dinner, snaps the little stick in half, and screams into the void, begging for a greasy plate of chili fries. Two teenagers with the driving skills of an armless blind man almost run over Ben, who turns into Big Chill to save the kids, but instead of accepting the thank you, he decides the car looks like a snack and starts chewing the metal in front of the horrified boys. The bugged watch spends the episode spitting out Big Chill against his will, and the poor guy flies from burger joints to foundries devouring metal, while Julie stalks her boyfriend with a notepad. In the end, the trio intercepts Big Chill in a tower and discovers the emo alien wasn't crazy. He was just building a nest to lay his own eggs, and the babies hatch and fly away, earning Ben the title of single mother and a brutal roasting from Kevin. Julie consoles the new mommy with a scooter ride, while Kevin and Gwen turn on the car radio and rub their bodies right there in the dark, accepting the consolation prize of the prom. The team tries to install a teleporter that decides to overheat, and Swampfire yeets the bomb away before becoming barbecue, which leads the gang after the little nerd Cooper, who was kidnapped by the DN aliens. Tracking the kid to a military base, they discover a holographic cloak hiding an alien snow city and a giant arch, along with the revelation that the villain's weakness is the sound of banging pots. After being humiliatingly captured by an arrogant hybrid, the team finally uses their brain cells. Kevin absorbs the magic stone, Gwen hits her boyfriend's stone arm, and Echo amplifies the noise into an auditory beatdown that knocks out all the guards. Cooper has an apocalyptic premonition, destroys the cloaking machine with his mind right as a random trucker drives by, and when the cops arrive, the aliens simply put on holographic masks and pretend to be construction workers building a luxury mall. The trio of deadbeats is getting badly beaten by a horde of DN aliens when Ben turns into Spider Monkey, and a second monkey joins the fray, beating everyone up with enviable agility, revealing himself to be Simeon. The critter cries a sad story about being a crown prince who needs to steal a crystal on the moon to prove he deserves the throne. And even with the girlfriend and the delinquent suspecting a lie, Ben buys the BS and travels to space. On the lunar base lives a pajama-wearing guard named Lou, who is extremely polite and just asks them to leave. But the supposed prince throws the peaceful bridge worker to certain death, forcing Ben to turn into Jetray to save the janitor and realize his little friend is an absolute psychopath. Ben turns into Chromastone and grabs the crystal first, making Simeon confess the whole story was a sham. He's just a cheap mercenary for the hybrid, and when he hands the stolen box to the boss, he finds out he actually swiped Kevin's acid dispenser, ensuring the monkey will get his ears painfully cleaned for being incompetent. Carl and Sandra are taking a drive, kissing the ground their perfect son walks on, completely clueless that he's an intergalactic delinquent, when a colossal hybrid drops into their laps and Ben activates the watch to turn into a stinky plant monster right in front of his parents. After getting beat up and earning a free black eye, he goes home with a lame excuse, but but Carl points to the giant hunk of junk on his wrist, and Ben confesses his double life, getting grounded in his room. He tries to play stealthy by turning into Echo Echo, gets busted by his mom, and throws his cousin under the bus, leaving the two crybabies locked in the house just like you when you got bad grades, while Kevin takes a beating alone from dozens of gooey aliens. Ben can't handle the pressure, throws obedience out the window, and turns into a steroid-pumped dinosaur to save his friend. In the climax, Carl and Sandra spawn out of nowhere with an alien bazooka and send the villain to the bottom of the sea. Carl mounts the weapon of mass destruction on the living room wall and clears his son to go save the world, as long as he takes a jacket so he doesn't catch a cold. The sci-fi cosplaying medieval knights want to take over the galaxy by stealing Julie's gooey dog's ship. At the mall, lasers melt the ceiling. Ben turns into Jetray and tears through the sky, only to arrive late and watch the knight kidnap the little goo and turn Kevin's sacred car into twisted scrap. At the base, a mad scientist shoves a remote control into Ship's hull to force total obedience. But when the gang invades the bankrupt English mansion, Julie uses the power of canine friendship and yells until Ship overrides the system, turns into a colossal spaceship, and annihilates the entire castle like a silly kid's sandcastle. Kevin suggests using the creature as a space taxi. Ben asks for a ball to play fetch, and Ship, being the freak that he is, turns into a living bowling ball and flattens the protagonist against the floor. A DNA alien mining operation goes horribly wrong and unleashes a gigantic alien baby scavenging for trash. Ben, using his room temperature IQ, deduces the toddler is a diabolical villain, turns into Humongosaur, and lays down the beatdown until Gwen uses her magic vision and realizes the great hero of the universe just assaulted a kid in diapers. Ben turns into Echo Echo, multiplies his own uselessness to blow up the DNA aliens from behind, and takes the little pest to Kevin's garage, who has a meltdown when the baby mistakes his car for a cheese puff and takes a bite out of the bodywork. They follow the trail to the buried ship, wake the parents from a 50-year nap, and the family vanishes into space. But not before the baby says her first word, calling for Gwen, proving that Ben is easily forgettable. Gwen receives mental messages, and before passing out from a headache, decides everyone is going to the dimensional hellhole called the Null Void. Ben refuses company, lets Kevin strap a tether to his back, and dives into the portal. An extra reveals that a madman named Devoid has enslaved everyone to build a giant drill and pierce Earth's barrier. Ben recognizes the masked dictator as the infamous Dr. Animo. On the way, a brute named Pierce tests the protagonist, making Ben take a dive on purpose, exactly like how you handle your own life. The rebel leader finally reveals himself to be Grandpa Max, who preferred becoming a criminal magnate over dying in that explosion. The squad raids the base. Ben turns into Big Chill and gives Animo's generator a nice freeze, and the nerdy cousin cries upon seeing her grandpa alive, but the stubborn old man refuses to come home. A generic trucker named Tyler loses his mind in the desert and runs to the police station to whine, but the cops are disguised DNA aliens. Tyler gets the strength of a steroid junkie bodybuilder and impales the fake cops against the wall. The trio rescues him and inspects the oscillator key in the crashed truck. Gwen deduces that Tyler himself is a DNA alien who loved being human so much that his brain rejected the mutation. Ben summons Humongosaur to pull the key from a giant ship's tractor beam. Everything goes miserably wrong, and the villains abduct Tyler along with the apocalyptic item. Ignoring Kevin's common sense to blow up the hostage, the morally unshakable protagonist turns into Jetray, saves the dead weight, and hands over the doomsday key on a silver platter. To shut the team up, he shoves his watch into Tyler's chest, curing the freak with his genetic goo and vomiting a cliched savior speech. The smartest and most arrogant race in the universe gets miserably beaten by the hybrid fleet. Azimuth watches the disaster from the front row until Paradox teleports the grumpy Toad out of there. The plan is to blow up the portal, so they assemble the Deep Web Justice League. Hot-headed Alan, Nerdy Cooper in a chunky tin suit, and Darkstar, released from the Null Void under the threat that everyone will die together. Azimuth reveals the watch is actually an intergalactic Noah's Ark full of genetic seeds and forbids Ben from fighting, but the stubborn kid threatens to beat the crap out of the Toad and forces the release of Master Control. Invading the base, Ben realizes the henchmen are enslaved humans, drains the battery curing the extras, and goes back to being a useless teenager. While ripping out the Doomsday Machine, the device turns on right in his face, frying Ben in a colossal explosion, just in time to see the sky vomit the entire hybrid fleet. The fleet of space racists parks on Earth and Ben wakes up in a crater. The trio sneaks into the control tower, Ben turns into swamp fire, and Kevin takes a serious beating from the grunts until Gwen activates her superpowered glowing fairy mode and promises to genocide the invasion by herself. Kevin has to act as the group's therapist and remind her she'll lose her humanity playing God. The captured commander laughs and warns that only the supreme leader can call off the attack, so the team hijacks a ship, crashes like idiots onto the villain's homeworld, and wakes up in chains. Ben screams at his own wrist to turn into Humungosaur, wrecks everything, and storms the council, where Azimuth lays the truth on the table. From so much inbreeding, the species became a bunch of defective, sterile mutants, and the galaxy attack was just a mass suicide, so they wouldn't die alone. Ben fires a cosmic ray that ejects his DNA into every alien in the galaxy, fixing the flaw by force, and his old buddy Ryan Rossig convinces the space racists that swallowing the new genetic load is better than dying, getting elected as the new boss. Max adopts the leftover kids. Kevin would rather take his girlfriend to a car show than lock up bad guys, and the Watch reboots, locking Ben's powers just to teach him not to play cosmic deity.
Man, I don't recognize any of these guys.
Far from Earth, the most persistent squid face in the universe, Vilgax, beats the crap out of some random planet's greatest hero and uses a technological vacuum cleaner to suck up powers, hoarding the strength of the galaxy's 10 greatest warriors just to stand a chance against a teenager. On Earth, Ben ignores a fight against a giant snake to receive a useless little medal, and when he shows up, he squashes the beast in 3 seconds with the arrogance of someone who thinks he owns the world. Vilgax freezes Max's students, brushes off the grandpa's shots, and issues a formal challenge for Earth, giving a one-day deadline. Ben accepts without breaking a sweat, and Kevin reveals a bootleg machine in his garage to hack the watch and unlock master control. Azimuth's Toadface pops up on a hologram telling them to stop, but Ben, on a level of monumental stupidity, thinks it's reverse psychology and forces the hack himself. The watch freaks out and spits an explosion that turns Kevin's garage into a smoking crater. Gwen survives thanks to a pink magic bubble, but her cousin's transformations run down the street like scared dogs, and poor Kevin turns into a freakish amalgamation of stone, metal, and garbage. Azimuth calls just to curse Ben out for being incompetent. The runaway aliens will die in 24 hours if they don't get back in their wrist Pokeball. The trio starts a pathetic GPS manhunt. Chromastone takes a beating from Kevin's trash arms, Spider Monkey kidnaps Gwen until she tells Ben to shut up and absorb the beast, and the sewer goo takes a methane blast. With minutes left, Ben refuses Max's help and goes to get his butt kicked live on national television. Vilgax crushes his forms without mercy. The Watch trolls Ben by turning him into Chromastone, who is shattered by a sword strike. The villain claims victory over the stone corpse, until the Watch sucks up the shards and resurrects the kid as Diamond Head, who beats the living daylights out of Vilgax and crushes him under 3 crystal mountains. The squid face bails out crying, Max censors the TV to save his grandson's identity, and the trio's cheesy friendship remains intact for the next disaster. Giant space cows are eating rocks, which is a massive problem since Kevin turned into a rubble monster. Down a deep hole, the trio faces Vulcanus, the jacked dwarf who blew all of Kevin's money to buy Earth, and drop a bomb in the core to turn the planet into a volcanic resort. Ben turns into Jetray, blows up the warhead before the apocalypse, and Kevin laughs until he cries at the villain's billion-dollar loss. The redneck Vreedle brothers arrive with a repossession order to take Julie's toy ship, because nothing screams action like an alien lawsuit. While the boys defend the goo and cosmic court, the Vreedles slap a boot on the creature and kidnap Julie as a bonus, until the original owner regenerates out of nowhere and leaves the gooey dog with her. Ben decides to stop a war on a planet where the idiots draw a dotted line on the ground to separate red from blue, all because they can't decide what color their pop idol was. Kevin takes advantage and paints the weapons to sell to both sides, until Ben smashes the idol's sacred statue and both armies unite under the color purple with a single goal, annihilating Ben. The trio stumbles upon a trail of solid gold poop and discovers that every 17 years, college aliens come down for a wild spring break. A greedy old capitalist kidnapped poor Decca in a barn to force the creature to crap more gold, until Ben turns into a silicon Echo and lets the monster swallow every clone, collapsing Decca's stomach into a gastric waterfall all over the team. A bounty hunter named Sunder severs Ben's watch, sending his body to the null void and leaving his left hand behind on Earth to tell the tale. The hand crawls crawls around like Thing from the Addams Family, and even turns into Jetray to grab Julie's leg, who freaks out and beats the crap out of her own boyfriend's severed arm, before Sunder gets tossed into the null void to fight in a gladiator arena of freaks. A whiny, racist alien decides that if he can't win the war, he's going to blow up the entire Earth. Grandpa Max has a mental stroke, sprouts purple tentacles, and becomes the literal brain of a giant abomination made of crystallized humans, until the three tear through the creature's anatomy, rip Max out from the inside, and the remorseful alien sacrifices himself in hero cosplay to implode his own weapon. Charmcaster, dying of jealousy over Gwen, disguises herself as a blonde named Caroline to hypnotize Kevin with a kiss, turning the poor guy into her personal lapdog. She traps Gwen in a runic snare and sucks her energy dry to the last drop, but Kevin uses his remaining 2 brain cells to trick the villainess, and Gwen drains all the magic back, leaving Charmcaster more deflated than a punctured ball. Darkstar convinces Kevin to steal the Dominus Librium with the promise of curing their radioactive ugliness. The artifact returns their soft human bodies, but Darkstar, being human trash, punches Kevin, steals the relic, and then uses it to suck the energy out of Gwen and Ben. That is, until Kevin does the most noble thing in his life and throws himself in front of them to give it all back, returning to being a monster made of garbage. Vilgax frees Ghost Freak and then crashes on Earth, all broken, crying a river and begging for help against the ghost that took over his planet. Ben has the brilliant idea of letting Ghost Freak into the Omnitrix on purpose, but the ghost immediately takes control and beats the crap out of everyone. In the end, Vilgax spares the idiots, smiling in the dark because he manipulated the teenagers and finally learned all the secrets of the watch. The trio finds a level 20 alien box that copies everything they say like a metallic parrot, offending Kevin's fragile ego. The thing turns into an abomination, mixing a dinosaur, a living plant, and a spider monkey to level the city, until the gang rips the monster a new one and pulls the energy cube out from inside. Then a cosmic alien mother drops in, revealing that this weapon of mass destruction was just her daughter's baby rattle. Space bureaucrats arrive with a peace treaty where the offering is literally a crybaby infant, which glitches the watch and turns Ben into a roided-up tiger named Wrath. The Frog King accepts the offering and swallows it in one gulp. Then Wrath leaps down his throat and brings the prince back out, safe and sound. In the end, Ben realizes the baby was glitching the watch and turns back into the tiger, just to scream at Kevin. The watch gets tired of Ben's incompetence, says it needs to go back to Primus, and ejects the team onto a jungle planet with rivers of green vomit. There they find Azimuth, the Toad creator of the watch, and Vilgax steals the device but proves to be a tech boomer who doesn't know how to use it. Ben sells himself as tech support, turns the villain into a static puddle, and then goes cosmic giant to toss Vilgax into orbit like space junk. Max's squad of extras flies to a space station thinking they're going to save Ben, splits up in the dark hallways like people who have never seen a horror movie, and gets hunted one by a protagonist in slasher mode. Cornered and about to squash London, they activate self-destruct and close their eyes accepting the end, but nothing happens. It was all a sadistic entrance exam for the Plumbers Academy, and they pass. Tetrax crashes on Earth demanding Chromastone and shatters Ben into 1,000 pieces, revealing Sugalite hidden inside him, the guardian of Petropia who needs a magic crystal to resurrect the planet. Vilgax spawns just to crash the party, beats up the guardian and steals the already dead crystal, but the dying guardian pulls a spare out of who knows where. Ben climbs the mountain and holds up the rock like in The Lion King, resurrecting the planet, while Vilgax just catches Ben's cold and ends up bedridden. Ragnarok escapes the null void and Kevin's mom confesses that this ugly brute sent his dad to the afterlife. Playing the lone wolf, Kevin tells Ben and Gwen to stay out of it, but the two are nosier than gossiping neighbors. Ragnarok thrashes the trio, shoves a key into his head like a human flash drive, and flees into space. Gwen grabs onto the teleportation, but Kevin, focused entirely on murder, spits the two back to Earth.
Put us out! Just remember, Tennyson, I asked you to stay out of this.
Alone, he smashes the control panel, and the villain gets sucked into the vacuum, begging for his life from the boy he orphaned. Kevin ignores him, watches the psycho turn into cosmic dust, and goes back to get a hug from Gwen. The redhead dresses up and breaks into the library to steal the big spell book. Ignoring the Time Master, she casts a spell to prevent her boyfriend's mutation and gets sucked into a wormhole. She travels back to the past, stops the watch hack, but returns to a dystopian world. Without the big guy, the Dark Wizard took over everything, turned her boyfriend into a stone henchman and put the protagonist on a leash. Doing it all for a man, she storms the castle, frees her cousin in monkey cosplay, who turns into a fire plant and drops the ceiling on the villain. In the chaos, she steals the book again, wipes the memory of her own dumb version, and returns to the normal present, proving that this team's greatest enemy has always been their own stupidity out in space. The muscular assistant whines that the white-haired doppelganger stole the upgraded watch. Hiding in a cave eating fries with the jacked squid face, the knockoff can't turn into the genius toad because of a lock and accepts the alien octopus's help. Then the evil twin starts a relentless hunt, destroys the mutant's car for the 1000th time, and appears on TV with the hero's friends as hostages. The protagonist takes the bait, both turn into giant dinosaurs, but the ripoff presses the golden button and goes ultimate dinosaur, flattening our hero into the ground like trash. The octopus demands the watch for the hostages' lives, and the kid hands over the most powerful weapon in the universe on a silver platter, letting the villain laugh like he just stole candy from a blind baby. The hero also gets to watch the squid face betray the albino clone and use the watch to turn an army of plastic dolls into giant lizards. Depressed, the protagonist runs away to cry in the forest like a misunderstood teenager, saying he's a nobody without the toy on his wrist until the watch's creator delivers a disappointed grandpa lecture and sparks an epiphany. The team boards the ship, gets surrounded, and when the octopus refuses to give back the hardware, the hero triggers the self-destruct. The watch blows up in his face, melts the army, and miraculously cures the redhead's boyfriend's stone body, who finally gets the wet kiss he's been waiting for all season. The octopus crashes the ship into the city, but the protagonist steals the ultimate version, turns into the roided-up fire plant, and roasts the space octopus's rear end before flying off and promising to beat the crap out of the seafood platter. A leaked video exposes our show-off's aliens to the whole world, and now he's a celebrity hunted by blood-sucking paparazzi, so he goes humongosaur to make the reporters wet their pants. They track down the evil genius who ruined his private life and discover it's Jimmy, a 10-year-old kid who just wanted the hero to enjoy the fame and who also shows a red alien beating up guards in Florida. In Kevin's new jet, they pick a fight with the Air Force, end up in jail, and the plumber's badge gets him out of the cell. A water bug alien steals NASA rocket parts, and of course, the defective watch glitches and he gets thrashed like garbage. The alien takes a nuke for a walk, they dive into a cave, and Ben finally evolves into Ultimate Spider Monkey, wrapping the creature entirely in webs. Crying, he says his name is Bi Valvin, and that he escaped from a kidnapper named Agragor. Ben promises to help and goes to school to get applauded by the very same bullies who used to steal his lunch money, while poor Bi Valvin finds out too late that Agragor found him first. Our irresponsible hero locks himself in the bathroom, turns into Echo Echo, and splits into three just to escape his own schedule, but the jerk Ben embarrasses his girlfriend terribly at her tennis match, and in the end, she tells the poor guy to get lost, leaving him completely clueless and alone.
Sorry!
How would you know?
A gang of washed-up villains cowardly attacks the hero's family, but when the vampire clown kidnaps his mom, the sorceress cousin wakes up tied down, and the pure hatred transforms her into a terrifying purple entity that corners Zombozo and tells him to warn the whole underworld before going back to being a sweet teenager enjoying cotton candy. A suit scans all of the protagonist's moves for a video game, and then a robot named Stalker shows up programmed to counter every single move he gave away for free, humiliating the hero until he realizes the only way to beat the algorithm is to act like a brainless primate. The trio finally remembers that the badge doubles as a translator, and the giant turtle Galapagus whines about Agragor, the horned lord who sucked his friend's abilities dry. The watch doesn't miss the chance to slurp up the turtle's juicy DNA, and the idiots call for a plumber transport to send Galapagus to a peaceful paradise. The problem is that the pilot was Agragor himself disguised as a highway patrolman, who locks the poor guy up and takes him away to absorb his essence to the very last drop, proving that trusting the space police is always a fatal mistake. Pendor, a radioactive toaster trapped in heavy armor, offers over $1 million to any space meathead who can rip open his hot casing. Kevin accidentally cuts the metal suit with Tatanite and releases the flaming villain, who runs off to stuff his face at a power plant and turns into a giant of pure radiation. Knowing they can't fight a walking nuclear disaster head-on, they forcibly stuff stuff the giant back into the tight suit, and Kevin welds the cracks shut. But the universe loves to rub failure in their faces. Agrigor's ship intercepts their taxi and steals Pendor for his alien juice collection. The Forever Knights are stealing pizza and burritos all over town, and the trio discovers that Arjit, the deadbeat rat, has taken the throne and is forcing the alien Andreas to rob fast food for him. The party ends when Officer Dagonet sentences Andreas to death for being an alien. Andreas then swallows the entire explosive charge with his own body to save the group, blowing himself up along with the castle. When Arjit shows he has the empathy of a brick regarding his partner's sacrifice, Kevin punches him in the face and ends their friendship forever. But Agrigor rescues Andreas's dying body to complete his bizarre collection. After a whole trip of nightmares, Ben returns home only to have his power lines penetrated by Rad, the last fugitive, who reveals that Agrigor is an energy-sucking mutant just like Kevin, planning to absorb the 5 of them to become a jacked god. While trying to fry the watch, Rad causes an explosion and ends up inside the protagonist's body until Kevin coats himself in tire rubber and reboots the system to separate the two. Agrigor breaches the place again and fries crab mode Ben's brain, but Rad stops being a coward and electrocutes the villain's staff in a massive detonation. Agrigor escapes, dragging Rad by the tentacles, collecting all the cards in his deck, and Ben delivers that typical cliched speech about how he's going to save the universe. The trio rots in line at a bookstore when thugs take the actress Jennifer hostage, and Spider Monkey Ben thrashes the goons until Captain Nemesis steals the spotlight. The old hero, purple with envy, fakes his own kidnapping just for likes and challenges the kid to see who has the biggest heroic tool. After getting dragged through the mud, the boomer snaps, declares himself Overlord, and Ben turns into a water alien who rusts the suit until he beats the villain with his bare hands and sends him to jail. Agrigor drags Rad to his ship, but the plumber police force arrives and destroys the villain's warp drive, leaving the poor bastard stranded in this dump called Earth. Meanwhile, Ben freezes his own crazed fans with Ultimate Big Chill, proving that fame is a burden. The team breaks into a military base infested with robots, where Professor Paradox pops out of nowhere just to lore dump. Agrigor wants to use a time machine like a phone charger to siphon the energy of the 5 captured aliens. The trio frees the 5, but Agrigor says screw Kevin's rule, shoves his spear into his chest, and absorbs all 5 at once, tearing the fabric of reality and being reborn as the invincible, roided-out Ultimate Agrigor.
Transfer mechanism is at full power. The aliens are only me.
Our bootleg watch hero tries to beat Ultimate Agrigor to a pulp, but the impenetrable exoskeleton feels nothing, and the villain wipes the floor with the Tennyson family's faces. Azimuth pops up out of nowhere in the middle of the wake just to complain about the Ultimatrix's trash design and reveal that Agrigor wants the 4 pieces of the map of infinity to become God himself at the Forge of Creation. With Max on sick leave, the trio ends up on the bipolar planet McDilty, half freezer, half grill, and invades a temple full of deadly traps. Gwen takes a deep sting from a poison dart and passes out right in the middle of the pit. To crown the humiliation, Agrigor smoothly shows up, thanks the trio of idiots for acting as his trap sweepers, and steals the map piece right to their faces. Ben goes cannonbolt and rolls away with the defeated team, swearing revenge. Cash and JT, the school's biggest attention leeches, proclaim themselves heroes while Ben does the dirty work, except Siphon, Vilgax's closeted fanboy, hears about this circus and comes to collect a blood debt. By some accidental miracle, the 2 idiots blow the villain up with a stolen weapon, but the camera battery dies right at the climax, and they remain unknown losers forever. Ben, mobbed by fans like a talentless pop idol, gets a distress text and travels with Gwen and Kevin to the water planet Pisces after the useless Magister Pike. After frying a giant squid with his gauntlets, Kevin's helmet cracks, and he absorbs the ship's metal so he doesn't pop like a water balloon. Then a bizarre fish swallows his head and becomes the most disgusting oxygen mask in the universe. At the planet's core, the trio catches Ultimate Agrigor groping the centripetal accelerator, the 2nd piece of the map of infinity. The villain bails, the guards blame the heroes, and with the planet crumbling, Goop uses his anti-gravity projector to hold the tectonic plates together and save everything. Chasing Agrigor through the pure mana dimension of Legerdemain, the team recruits Charmcaster, who almost kills them before agreeing after hearing the name of her birthplace. Amidst some broken physics, they get beat up by the dictator Adwaitia, and Ultimate Humungosaur breaks breaks the ice with pure aggression. Then Agragor pops out of nowhere, steals the Alpha Rune, the third piece, and dips, leaving everyone looking like fools. Charmcaster stays behind playing the martyr, and Ben makes the classic empty promise to come back and save her. Azimuth rubs it in Ben's face that he let the villain steal 3 pieces and teleports the team to the Perplexahedron, a Rubik's Cube with the drunkest gravity in the cosmos. In the maze, the Watch betrays Ben by spitting out the wrong alien. Gwen gets ignored by Agragor like an ex and turns into a magic popsicle until Swampfire melts the ice and she and Kevin swap spit mid-mission. They find the last piece in the Sentinel's crown, but Agragor tanks Ultimate Cannonbolt chest first, rips the crown off, and the team ends up pretending they didn't just lose the whole game. After letting the villain put together the cosmic puzzle pieces out of sheer incompetence, the trio gets a scolding from the genius frog Azimuth, and the Watchboy asks his friends for the override keys to unlock Alien X, proof that no one trusts him even to hold a TV remote. Inside the god alien's mind, 2 giant heads bicker like a divorced couple until Professor Paradox breaks in, violating an intergalactic restraining order, and de-transforms the protagonist. The Time Lord teleports the losers to the Forge of Creation, the nursery where gods are born, revealing that Agragor wants to suck a newborn's energy to become master of the universe. The redhead fishes out the 10-year-old version of the protagonist, an insufferable brat who immediately starts setting everyone on fire.
Someone. I'm Ben Tennyson.
Little juvenile delinquent?
In the colossal hands of a space mom, Agragor effortlessly beats the crap out of everyone, and the humiliated goth goes full vacuum cleaner mode, absorbs the energy from the watch itself, and turns into a grotesque freak who drains the villain dry, but the power goes to his head, until the brat gives a half-assed motivational speech that convinces him not to kill anyone today. Paradox shows up to clean up the mess. With the mutant goth in full psychotic breakdown mode, he goes on a revenge tour in a space prison just because some poor sap put him in the ICU over an $8 debt. The hero and the magic redhead track him down to the disgusting bureaucrat Morgue's penitentiary and discovered the prison is actually a hallucinogenic dust trafficking farm. The protagonist breathes the blue dust, freaks out and beats his own cousin to a pulp but gets slapped awake and frees the prisoners. Seeing that his former best friend has turned into a meat grinder, he coldly decides he'll have to put the mutant down like a sick dog. A hustler alien rat takes on a suicide mission to break into the Plumber Academy to forge grades for 2 hillbillies with the IQ of a French fry. The protagonist runs the rodent over and turns him into a fur rug, and the critter begs for asylum, crying that the crazy goth is hunting him. They hide the rat in the school, but the roided-out mutant breaks in, handing out free beatdowns to the cadets, and the hillbillies brilliantly drop a nuclear bomb in the classroom. The hero turns into flying speakers and takes the explosive to space. The furry pest had only been playing dead and gets arrested on the spot for 14 outstanding warrants. Alan runs through the cornfield like a scarecrow because mutant Kevin is chasing him like an addict in withdrawal. Kevin drains the Fire Kid's powers, but Ben shows up as NRG and finds out his friend has already wiped the floor with Helen, Pierce, Manny, and even Dr. Victor. Ben makes the most mature decision of his life and decides to murder his best friend, sparking a disproportionate family feud where he goes way big and obliterates his own cousin with a cosmic ray to the face. While he tortures Forever Knights for info, Gwen recruits Darkstar for a plan to cure Kevin with a piece of the Dominus Librium. But at the couples therapy, the brainless Kevin ties the poor girl up with vines and starts sucking her life essence just for kicks. With Kevin addicted to Gwen's pink juice, the girl uses an arcade spell to escape her own boyfriend and run to Ben and Darkstar, who reveals the big monster got a taste of magic and now wants to swallow it all, making Ben's cousin the bait in a suicide mission. The crazed mutant breaks into Gwen's house, beats Grandpa Max mercilessly, and turns the city upside down with Ben. Kevin summons a tornado, sidelines Spider Monkey, and goes drooling after Gwen, until Julie and the space dog shoot the beast, revealing that the real Ben was hiding in the trunk like a coward. Ben goes ultimate Echo Echo, shreds Kevin's eardrums with metal discs, and humiliates the monster. Just as he's about to commit manslaughter, Gwen begs for her boyfriend's life. Cooper turns on the machine and turns Kevin back to normal. Darkstar tries to absorb the power to become a god, but Ben had already pressed the gadget's sucker button. Kevin apologizes and is soon drinking fruit smoothies with Ben. A ship falls from the sky and spits out Eunice, a naked amnesiac girl, whom Ben immediately hits on in cheap pickup artist mode, leaving Gwen burning with jealousy. The bounty hunter Sunder presses a button on the back of her neck and reveals the new girlfriend is just a glorified flash drive. Azimuth pops up out of nowhere, takes the accessory girl away, and leaves Ben empty-handed. Ship crosses the galaxy looking for his old owner, and Ben, being immature, pouts and refuses to help Julie because he thought they broke up. In a gross plot twist, the Oculent artifact was shoved deep inside Bazel, who barfs up the slobbery ball after a Heimlich maneuver. Ben finally apologizes for being a garbage boyfriend. The meddling Jimmy Jones catches Ben chatting up a monstrous space plant, but nobody believes him, and Will Harang twists everything on TV. Gwen and Kevin turn into dead-eyed clones created by the Weeds, whose plan is to clone the planet into a fun-free utopia. The vegetable's weakness is bar peanuts, so the kid shoves his backpack down the villain's throat, and the real Ben goes ultimate swampfire to incinerate the space salad. Over in Zarkovia, Prince Gila controls Dr. Victor's frozen body with mind control tiaras and crushes the whole team. King Zarian, instead of helping, milks Ben's electricity to transfer his own consciousness into the Frankenstein, who wakes up thirsty for blood. Ben melts him with heat blast. Gwen freezes him in a straitjacket, and in the end, the team just breaks the remote control and leaves the country to its own misery. The trio faces the ultimate human nightmare, an entitled relative. The preppy cousin Sonny vaporizes the robots Gwen was about to hack and humiliates the redhead by proving she has a thicker, pulsing mana reserve. Her boyfriend, the troll Antonio, is so dumb he tries to hit Ben with a live power pole and fries himself until Grandma Verdana spawns from the beyond and grounds her rebel granddaughter in a mana bubble. Ben wakes up to Dr. Victor invading his room full of tentacles before melting into a sea of microchips. Thinking it's his ex Elena's fault, the team investigates, but she plays dumb. Ben finds out Elena became the microchip queen and went full Yander just to have the protagonist all to herself. Julie uses the power of dialogue to touch the villain's heart, who has a crisis of conscience and walks into the force field to disintegrate herself, while the camera focuses on the chips twitching, proving crazy women never truly leave. 20 years in the future, Eon, a villain cosplayer, takes a colossal beating from Ben 10,000, but Paradox warns that the interdimensional headache has just begun. In the present, the trio finds the hands of Armageddon, and future Ben pops into the timeline to warn them that Eon is wiping out alternate versions of the kid. Eon turns way big into cosmic dust, until the roided-out future Ben saves his scrawny version. Eon is just another egocentric Ben who wants to be the only one in existence, but the plan crumbles when Jetre destroys the hands for good, restoring the timeline. Before dipping, Paradox drops a cryptic warning about some guy named Old George. Two Renaissance Fair cosplayer knights and their squire bust open an ancient door with a laser. A roar echoes, the knights vanish, and the squire runs away crying. Meanwhile, Old George feels a magic shiver and miraculously gets out of his wheelchair. The useless trio arrives, bumps into Sir Cyrus, and calls a truce to hunt the beast. In the city, the creature shoves tentacles into Gwen's mind, who figures out the monster is called a Lucubra and loves to suck thoughts until its victims are left in a vegetative state. Tracking the squire's backpack, they find the warehouse where the beast milks the hostages. Ben goes Armodrillo and NRG. Kevin saves Gwen, and she tosses the monster back into an interdimensional hole and locks the door with magic. But the squire's eyes flash neon green, and Old George arrives too late, sighing exactly like you do when you look at your own life. The squad ends up at the Plumber Academy in the hands of Magister Hulka, a sadistic instructor who hates anyone who relies on powers and training. The spoiled protagonist ignores the rules and goes fast track to save the useless recruit Tack, and in the end, the trio takes down the villain Kolar and Ben graduates with a little medal for being a creative cheater. The real cosmic terror isn't Animo riding a fleet of mutant frogs, but Gwen's absurd school schedule. She watches her teammates get beat up by roided-out amphibians on her phone, saves Kevin from the scientist Ray with a shield, and back home, just yawns and tells her mom her day was completely normal. Sir George goes full Rambo and makes all of Area 51 disappear in a blink of light, and the team discovers Colonel Razum kept 774 aliens locked in a basement for 50 years. An invisible lizard steals Cooper's ship to get revenge. Ben goes ultimate wild mutt to crush him, and Max verbally destroys the Colonel for being an irresponsible sadist. Digging through the trash, Gwen finds an old bracelet and forces Max to recount his golden years as an Air Force Chad when he flirted with the redhead Verdona, an alien who used the bracelet to suppress her powers. He saves saves her from a robot that wanted to use her as a Duracell battery but turns down her offer to be his space sugar mommy, staying focused on that Sigma grind set. The hustler monkey Simeon falls off a pole begging for help. He handed over a parasite queen to a crime lord who enslaved the entire planet. And the team finds out the cure guns don't work on monkeys. Ben goes ultimate spider monkey to show who the biggest primate in the hood is, but in the end, Simeon shows up selling the cure arsenal on the black market. A Tekadon robot lands in Bellwood, but Ben is more worried about humiliating his girlfriend at mini-golf by turning into Brainstorm to calculate the perfect putt. After finding out the weapon masters built these bots just to hunt him, he blinds the machine by covering his wrist with his own jacket, and the team slaps the watch's mark onto Vulcanus's back, who runs away crying in rage. The armor-clad geezers of the Forever Knights are arguing at a homeowners association meeting until George shows up handing out moral cane beatings. When Driscoll tries a coup, George wipes the floor with the guy's face and reveals he's the founder of the fan club, uniting the xenophobic boomers to do an alien cleanse. In a botched ambush, the trio takes a beating from a plasma tank, but Ben goes ultimate spider monkey and pummels Driscoll until the phony knight cries uncle and frees the prisoners. Driscoll goes crying back to Daddy George, who just pats the loser on the head and warns that this little humiliation was just a warm-up for a 100-lifetime battle. A hooded cult raids a freak show drooling over a creature in a tank dubbed Dagon. Julie drags Ben to the cult's HQ, who swear alien gods will descend to pay humanity's bills. Suspicious, Ben goes Chameleon and finds out the almighty Dagon is just the loser Vilgax, using the cult idiots who even stole a plumber ship. Ben mocks his crumbled empire, and the enraged squid sends out his dimensional goons. He goes ultimate big chill and freezes everyone, but the leader takes Julie hostage. Ben exposes the mollusk god as a third-rate dictator. Kevin has already rigged the ship's engine, and Ben goes Echo Echo, shatters the trash squid's tank with a scream, and takes his stubborn girlfriend to dinner, leaving Vilgax in the shards promising apocalyptic revenge. Our narcissistic hero is stuffing his face with burgers when he sees a phony musical about himself on TV and crashes the premiere. The human knockoff is Albedo, so broke he became an amateur theater actor to pay rent. His plan to detonate a biological bomb backfires. The DNA shock reverts him to a naked space frog, and the dramatic climax of the night is the hero going home and getting sued by the theater owners. Ben wins the Worst Boyfriend of the Year award for ditching his girl at the airport to play hero and almost becomes slime juice in an industrial blender. Except the overly perfect girlfriend is a total imposter, the microchip psycho who turned into a swarm of digital roaches just to be the only toy in his life, until the real one shows up and unleashes anime's deadliest weapon, a speech telling the villain she doesn't know what love is. The protagonist, Ultimate Dinosaur, goes crazy and decides to murder his own friends, until the emo solves it in the most civilized way possible, running the lizard over. The bootleg watch shorts out and sucks the hero into the system, where the ultimate aliens have formed an angry union planning to throw him into a pit of fire. He plays the dramatic martyr, dives headfirst into hellfire, but wakes up safe and sound. The scare freed the Union and fixed the watch's factory defect. The Vreedle brothers take a beating from their own alien mommy, who calls them defective clones and plans to suck the planet dry to spit out 300 billion pretty boys. Kevin cries in fear of her, proving that being a bad boy only works until a mad mom shows up, and Ben gets captured like a chump but tricks the smooth-brained old lady until the rejected clones hand their own mother over to the authorities. An entire island of garbage sinks a freighter, and Colonel Razum begs the team to investigate the Pacific trash vortex, which has swallowed dozens of ships, including his sister. On the stinking island, Ben finds what's left of his dignity tossed in the trash, an autographed picture of himself. The trash monster grows by absorbing debris and decides to move to San Francisco for the all-you-can-eat buffet, until Ben uses his brain and creates a water cyclone that tosses the creature straight into the sun. The team beats the crap out of the esoterica weirdos, and Kevin rips a goon's mask off, revealing Winston, the brainwashed Forever Knight squire used as a puppet. They dump the kid at the xenophobe's door, where Driscoll tells a bedtime story about St. George ripping out Dagon's heart, until Dagon uses Gwen as an intercom to warn that if Vilgax gets his meaty hands on the heart, the universe is screwed. As a thank you, the knights lock the heroes in a basement. In the sanctuary, George ignores the extras and walks up to the heart impaled on the sword, but Vilgax, looking like rotten meat, grabs the prize, regains his muscles, and squashes everyone with one slap. Gwen teleports Ben and Kevin before passing out like a sack of potatoes. Vilgax shoots a laser that knocks out Ben and a backhand that drops Kevin right on top of his partner. Thinking he's become a god, Vilgax breaks the seal and starts screaming as he's sucked into Dagon's dimension. Meanwhile, old George de-ages into a silver-armored warrior and tells the dragon to bring the heat because he's boiling over. The useless trio watches Sir George grab the sword Ascalon and get instant magical Botox, demanding everyone kneel, until Azimuth's dwarf frog self pops up demanding his shiv back. George breaches the seal, sees Dagon has already dipped, and bails through a portal, humiliating Ben, Gwen, and Kevin, who only managed to yank a tuft of the old man's hair. Pressed for explanations, Azimuth drags everyone to a past illusion cinema. As an obsessed young scientist, he forged the reality-altering sword to impress Zenith, who thought the idea was irresponsible and left the simp on read. A frog warrior stole the weapon and blew up his own planet. Feeling the guilt hit, Azimuth hid the sword and created the Omnitrix as an apology, handing the lethal toy to George in the Middle Ages. In the present, Gwen sniffs out the DNA from the hair tuft like a hound and tracks George to Area 51, where Ben goes ultimate humongosaur and clashes head-on with the knight. Mid-brawl, the two strike a gentleman's agreement. If George kicks the bucket against Dagon, Ben inherits the sword. In the end, Azimuth confesses he created the most powerful watch in the universe just to get his ex's attention, the biggest simp in the galaxy. A weapon master bot named Inspector 13 raids Kevin's garage, tracking the watch's signal, and captures our cheating hero mid-tennis match. Since ripping off the Ultimatrix would make Ben's arm explode, he hacks Azimuth's impenetrable system like someone stealing their neighbor's Wi-Fi. Ben starts playing God by transforming Gwen and Kevin remotely, until he remembers he has vocal cords, goes for arms, and pummels the inspector with brute force. Gwen guesses the name of the magic realm Legerdemain using an IT girl algorithm, and drags the team to the other side, where Charmcaster tosses the souls of the entire realm into a blender to resurrect her own father. She summons Dagon, but her dad comes back, finds out his daughter decimated the population to fund his resurrection, calls her a psychopathic tyrant, and kills himself by evaporating into thin air. Dagon returns the souls, and the heroes just leave the poor girl crying in the void of her own misery. Jennifer Nocturne frees Carl Nesmith, the former Captain Nemesis, by sliding a bomb under the visiting glass purely on pretty girl privilege. The duo interrogates the girl's mother, and the hero turns into Humongosaur to lift the entire trailer like a drunken tractor. In the final battle, the crazy actress puts on her boyfriend's giant mecha and gives the hero an epic beatdown until Gwen short-circuits the armor and forces Nesmith to take the fall by pretending Jennifer was just a hostage, proving that a true simp goes to jail for love. One of the eggs in the fridge decides it doesn't want to be an omelet and hatches into a pterodactyl right on the counter. The Jurassic chicken came from Dr. Animo's farm. He plans to sabotage a weather balloon just because his cold-blooded pets need some heat. The balloon explodes gloriously. Big Chill freezes the dinosaur flock, and Jetray reverses the polarity, turning the Jurassic threat into a bunch of farm chickens, accidentally giving the useless sheriff superintelligence and proving that even a broken clock is right twice a day. Darkstar resurfaces by stealing a page out of Gwen's playbook, and Charmcaster drags him to her depressed goth girl lair in Legerdemain. But the romance goes down the drain when he discovers that kissing her floods his body with mana, and, addicted to the taste of other people's magic, he flees to Earth to play God. When she tearfully challenges him to say his real name, he drops a humiliating Heather, and the rejected girl's fury brings down the castle, locking the powerless parasite right in the hero's faces while she cries, hugging his stinky mask. Our useless hero is drooling on his pillow when a Dream Eater sticks to his face like a cosmic tick, and he turns into NRG to melt the goo. Then the schizophrenic trip begins. He takes a beating from Vilgax until he tricks him into getting run over by a ghost truck isekai style, finds Agrigor tearing Lodestar's head off like a Lego piece, and his girlfriend trying to slice him up. In the end, he figures out the emo kid demanding the watch is just a jealous albedo in disguise and humiliates him because he realized he's in the Matrix and became immortal. In real life, the team watches albedo slip on his own trash and beg for mercy inside his own nightmare.
Please don't hurt me. Stay back.
While the heroes play mechanic in a submarine car, weird cultists invade just to catch a free beating. The magic girl cages one in a pink bubble, and the emo kid beats out of him that the cult opened the doors for an interdimensional demon in Area 51. On the battlefield, the Forever Knights are too xenophobic to accept help and shoot at the team, until the protagonist turns into a green blob and beats up the armored tin cans. The emo kid gets the brilliant idea to launch the boy across the map with a medieval catapult, and he turns into Heat Blast midair, landing full of swagger on the other side of the abyss, only for the redhead to confess she could have just teleported him. Meanwhile, Squire Winston jumps in front of a beam from behind, tragically dying to save old Sir George, owner of an immortal magic sword, who slices the assassin like Swiss cheese and runs to the seal. Inside, Dagon's voice cracks the wall like a cheap radio announcer and spits out his new lackey, Vilgax's buff octopus form, now the demon's official lapdog, who crushes the knights and simply smashes the seal's door, collapsing the cave and revealing the boss's dark dimension. The emo kid fuses a floor laser gun with his plumber badge to try and be useful, and the redhead raises her pink shield just in time as Dagon unleashes a wave that turns the entire planet into squid-faced cultists. Only the team and the protagonist's useless girlfriend escape. Heat Blast melts the ground beneath the octopus and buries him in molten rock, but old George stubbornly refuses the anti-mind control helmet, blindly trusting his shiny little sword. With no useful spells in her inventory, the redhead tries a shield, but Dagon hacks her brain through her mental search history and turns her into an evil fairy who flies off to break the seal, until the protagonist takes a humiliating cosmic slap that brings him back to normal. The emo kid arrives drifting in a car, shoves a metal bucket over her head, and instantly disconnects her from the demon's Wi-Fi. The team corners the buff squid, Vilgax begs for power and gets the biggest ghosting in history, and when the idiots look up, a gigantic Dagon is already floating in Earth's sky, rubbing it in their faces that the tables have turned. Vilgax bails just like you, running from your responsibilities, leaving old George to deal with the mess while the cultists focus on him. The protagonist switches to ultimate way big and rubs his body against Dagon until he throws him into a dam, but his lasers do as much damage as a slingshot against a tank, and the beast replies with an acid drizzle that melts the hero's morale, leaving him passed out in the water. Ben wakes up as ultimate wild mutt, then turns into chromastone and absorbs the divine lasers, firing them back in the monster's face, but Dagon just buries him in the ground and turns George to dust with a red beam, dropping the Ascalon sword on the ground. Vilgax shows up with Siphon's cosmic vacuum cleaner and sucks up the entire god like a strawberry milkshake, growing gigantic, but Gwen teleports the team to Mount Rushmore. The piece lasts 2 seconds until Vilgax rips George Washington's face off the mountain and beats up everyone. Instead of his toy watch, Ben grabs the Ascalon sword, dons medieval armor, and reflects the attack, sucking the alien goo back out and leaving Vilgax impotent and in his normal form. Ignoring the genocidal maniac's advice to become a universal dictator, the hero raises the sword and spits light across the earth, curing all humans. Julie appears out of nowhere to give him a kiss, and Azimuth shows up demanding his stuff back. He confiscates the sword, rips off the Ultimatrix, and finally hands over the true Omnitrix, telling the kid to wait until he's 18 for master control. 5 years ago, the arrogant protagonist gets brutally beaten by the Red Goo malware, who forcefully rips the watch off out of pure hatred. Turning back into a useless kid, the boy becomes feedback and absorbs all the monster's energy. In the present, Gwen and Kevin ditch him for college, abandoning him to be a lonely loser just like you. A weird hunter unleashes his buff alien dog, and the watch humiliates the hero by turning him into a scrawny spider monkey who takes a historic beating. Discovering mobsters collecting protection money, he figures out the whiny alien at the diner is Rook, a rookie sent by Max. He turns into the Lego alien blocks, loses both arms, builds himself into a catapult, and chucks the bomb into an empty building, and the explosion reveals Undertown, an entire subterranean metropolis. The chase continues through Undertown while the hero complains he doesn't want a partner. The watch turns him into the heater NRG, who spits on the floor like an old smoker. Kyber grabs the radioactive spit and makes his dog sniff it out, but the watch gives him water hazard and the hero takes a wet beating. In a toxic gas-filled bar, the duo finds the big boss, Siphon, Vilgax's formerly scrawny lackey who now wants to plant bombs on the surface. He fries the nervous system in the hero's arm, who bumps into everything like a teenager discovering the internet at 3 a.m. Once recovered, the hero turns into Shock Squatch and fries the dog. Rook crushes Siphon, and he finally accepts the rookie as a partner only after being bribed with a bucket of chili fries.
Chili fries. Care to join me? Partner!
In the past, the grand opening of his favorite burger joint is ruined by a tiny electric alien. The kid turns into feedback, sucks the energy out of hundreds of copies at once, and leaves his cousin to clean up the mess. 5 years later, he shows up late thinking he owns the world, and Rook takes him on the most boring patrol in the universe until they spot the criminal Corvo with a space burner phone. Wanting to turn into Big Chill, the watch gives him Heat Blast. He melts tires and eats asphalt, while tiny electric creatures identical to the ones from the past spawn from the engine. Turning into the obese Clockwork, he arrives at a warehouse where Fist-Trick is using the critters as cheap batteries. The watch innovates by giving him Gravitack, and he tosses the thug's robot back and forth like a broken toy. Finally, he turns into a fat, gravitational planet, swallows the villain, and spits him far away. The little aliens become the city's new power grid. Our useless protagonist is peacefully snacking until Kyber's stalker dog turns into the giant Slamworm and swallows Diamond Head, who proves to be a terrible snack and gets spat out covered in drool. Convinced that Dr. Animo is behind it, Ben drags Rook to the cell, but the villain escaped through a tunnel behind the toilet. Tracking mutant ants to a giant anthill where Animo is playing dress up as the Ant King, Ben takes a beating from Wrath, turns into Crash Hopper, gets stuck in Mucilator's goo, and is saved by Rook, who detonates the core. Animo goes back to the Slammer, and Ben accepts that his paranoia about being hunted was real. The sky rains missiles, Crash Hopper and Rook dodge everything, and a giant ship anchors in orbit. Ignoring Grandpa Max, the two invade the Rust Bucket and bump into the Vreedle brothers, until Argit steals their truck containing the Annihilar, a weapon capable of erasing entire universes out of pure boredom. Emperor Milius arrives with his fleet to buy the bomb, chaos erupts, and the weapon ends up activated. Out of options, Ben turns into Alien X milliseconds before the end of everything, debates with the two voices in his head, and recreates the universe from scratch. Perfect, except for a new hoodie and Mr. Smoothie's logo being changed, just like you when you fix a machine and have spare parts left over. But his friends just think he had a panic-induced illusion. Kyber breaks into the plumber base in the dead of night and triggers a flashback to 5 years ago. In the past, Azimuth fixes Ben's buggy watch with a smack, like an old TV, until Malware, a defective cybernetic monster, crashes into a swamp and vandalizes the city, demanding an upgrade. Ben turns into Feedback and Four Arms, but Malware kidnaps the arrogant Albedo and flees to the moon Galvin B to force his own cure. There, Azimuth plays the misunderstood genius, sabotages the machine, and gives Malware a complete upgrade. Ben's watch times out at the worst possible moment, but he's secretly turned into Diamond Head, and since the monster is too incompetent to absorb crystals, he ends up encased in a paralyzing prison. In the present, Kyber downloads all this gossip onto a flash drive and sneaks out, swearing he now knows how to destroy our useless hero. During an absurd heatwave, a girl named Esther runs across the rooftops carrying a nuclear fusion engine. Ben turns into Crash Hopper to help and jumps straight into a pool, looking like a clown in front of her. Rook points out the thief was flirting, but Ben has the charm of a brick wall. The duo is cornered by the Kraho, aliens who freeze to death inside a volcano, until Esther, who reveals she's half Kraho, freezes the goons with water. She takes them to the enemy base, and while Rook distracts the henchmen, Ben dons the NRG armor and swallows the fusion engine whole. Out of plot convenience, Esther reveals she's the heir to the Kraho throne and hugs Ben. Panicking at the female contact, he flees to drink lemonade, denying he's her boyfriend, but soon asks if he has a chance, proving he's just as delusional as you are. A 2-bit scammer named Hoakstar sells a miracle elixir in the underground city, and Ben is suspicious until he's bought off by a sumo slammer action figure. The savior of the universe has the price tag of a fast food toy. He discovers the villain is milking an endangered creature in a basement to make the liquid, turns into amphibian, and escapes with the flying critter, but the beast grows with nitrogen, and upon breathing Earth's air, turns into a giant monster drooling sulfuric acid. After turning into 5 useless aliens and a Lego monkey to save a train, Ben traps the beast in a dome. Hoakstar sucks out the nitrogen, and the creature goes back to being harmless. Space police arrest the annoying hippie, and our hero sneaks away without paying for the damages. A flashback recalls the day a red slime rubbed the protagonist's face in the dirt and sucked all the power from the original watch. In the present, a giant crab smashes through the mall wall where Ben was playing video games, and Kyber whistles from afar, paralyzing the hero in the form of a blind dog. We find out a crazy crab brain ordered Ben's DNA to build his own bootleg watch. Ben enters poor Pakmar's shop, turns into the alien mud again, and is knocked out by a whistle. Kidnapped, he escapes on a hoverboard, but Kyber drops a billboard on his face, and the pet turns into a fat ball and sits comfortably right on top of the hero. When the battery dies, Kyber grabs the kid by the neck, laughing at the fact that the savior of the universe was defeated by an angry pet shop owner.
Yes.
Ben is strung up from the ceiling like cheap ham while Kyber sharpens his knife to chop his arm off, revealing that the bootleg Omnitrix on the dog's neck was made by malware and Dr. Psychobos. 5 years ago, a lunatic named Phil, kidnapped to be a guinea pig, turns into a bizarre spider, and the kid sucks all his energy as feedback, frying the human's mind until the pet inherits the collar. In the current nightmare, Ben grabs Kyber's sword, and Rook appears out of nowhere, shocking the villain in the back. The dog turns into a fire crab and a centipede, trapping the hero in a sticky cocoon, but he uses gray matter to deliver a fatal pinch that shuts the monster down, turns into Big Chill, freezes the hunter, and bails holding his partner. Malware shows up only to yell at the broken, useless pet on the ground, then falls from a burning building right into Gwen and Kevin's laps, but before the sappy hug, an alien ship obliterates the meathead's precious car. They flee to the underground city where a four-armed princess pops out of nowhere screaming that she came to get Kevin to consummate their marriage. The redhead fumes with jealousy, while the princess beats up her beloved, who confesses he promised his soul for an indestructible engine part. Ben tries to save his backstabbing friend, takes a beating in every possible way until he hits the jackpot and turns into four arms, drops the hammer, and emerges victorious like a smooth-brained idiot, until the king reveals the law forces the princess to marry whoever defeats her in brute strength. Kevin cowardly flees, leaving the hero trapped in a forced engagement due in 3 years. Massive boats are swallowed by a whirlpool, while the useless gang casts lines in the underground port. The fat magistrate gets fished out by 2 tin can robots who flee at the speed of light, and the chase throws the team's boat down a deadly waterfall. The captive becomes the main course in the kitchen of Captain Cork, a crazy hoarder who keeps entire vessels inside glass bottles. Ben dismantles the robot scrap to create a 6-armed mechanical monster, but a colossal squid swallows the hero in the form of a green cricket and is forced to vomit him onto dry land. Ben summons the Crystal Head to beat up the villain, while Rook shoots the bottles back to the surface. The ship sinks down the ocean's drain, and the heroes escape in a dinghy holding the captain packaged like second-rate ham. Kyber's pet starts glitching out like crazy thanks to the bootleg watch, and the giant crab fries malware and Dr. Psychobos to go fetch the missing piece straight from the source. At the base, the cybernetic crab grabs Ben's wrist, steals a piece of the Omnitrix, and bails, causing the system to completely collapse. The watch fires random energy and releases the prisoners from their cages. Blukich and Driba try to fix it, but they only turn the hero into a useless little bluefish named Walcatrot, and then into an obese yellow blob who calls himself the worst thing in the universe. Looking like a Discord moderator, they cut the power and close the portal, and the scientists finally shove the right piece into the watch. Far away, the crab stabilizes the dog and points out the kid is just a bonus, because the real target was always the creator of the Omnitrix. A bizarre humanoid elephant named Trombipulor wants ultimate power and throws the hero's 4 arms form against a car like trash. Rook begs for backup, but Blukich and Driba abandon their post, drooling over a grasshopper-flavored smoothie commercial, crash their ship into the back of a bus, and get humiliated by a squirrel and a stray cat that drags their faces across the rooftops. The duo chases the elephant to the docks, but the villain reveals his army of robotic rats wanted the true cosmic treasure, peanuts. He swallows a mountain of nuts and swells up, but refuses to fight near the cargo because he's allergic to peanuts, then turns into a green blob. The frogs fall onto the shipment, and the elephant vacuums the trio up his nostrils until he sneezes everyone into the air. The blob turns into the sound alien. The frogs make the rats attack their own boss, and the sonic screams burst the poor guy's giant eardrums until he collapses. The egocentric hero is trapped in a charity dunk tank at a festival, and his partner dunks him in freezing water just for kicks while brats order him to turn into big-headed crabs and gross flies. The clown show is interrupted when Kyber's mutant dog invades the party and knocks over a giant bell, rolling after the kids. Ben takes a beating from the armored dog that shapeshifts non-stop, and upon turning into the goth ice moth, he takes a face full of smoke that leaves him tripping balls. Trapped in his own mental high, he goes back 5 years in the past, remembering when Malware's sludge attacked Mount Rushmore, while the hunter scraped the original moth's DNA for his dog's jar. In the present, Ben realizes the dog just wants to waste his time, and warns Rook that the real target was always the space van. The red sludge swallows the hard parts of the van and flees, leaving the vehicle with a fried memory, and the useless hero goes back to his wet chair of humiliation. Ben and his space cat-faced partner fly to Ravana for an agricultural festival that looks more like an intergalactic redneck town, and he thinks the fireworks are a terrorist attack when it's just the locals scaring off giant gluttonous rats. At the farm, Rook's dad looks at him with the disappointment of a father seeing you wake up at noon. Playing farmer, Ben turns into blocks, drops a rock on his own head, and crushes the entire harvest, proving his negative IQ. When the Muroids invade, he finds the meathead Fistrick training the rats and gets captured. By a miracle of the plot, the watch times out right then. Ben slips out of the chains, turns into Kickenhawk, hands out drop kicks to Fistrick's face, and saves the farm. At the party, the father finally accepts his son, and the hero struts up gloriously only for the planet to laugh at him because he's wearing a woman's dress. Dimension 12 robots turn Bellwood into scrap metal, and in the middle of the brawl, a flying brat begs for attention like an ignored kid at the supermarket. He reveals himself to be Billy Billions, an ex-classmate who always lost to Ben in school. In a humiliating dodgeball flashback, the rich kid begged while Ben didn't give a crap about the world and got picked immediately. The shorty's tantrum turns Ben into a little kid and gives Rook a disgusting puberty tale. Trapped in a body the watch doesn't even recognize, he confesses a fear of peacocks to bypass the lock and turns into Ball Weevil. Billy freaks out in his ostentatious tower and opens a portal that sucks up the world, but in the end, he throws the weapon. The laser bounces like pinball and sucks all the scrap metal back in. Rook gets his puberty reversed, and Grandpa Max tosses the crying villain into the trunk. The blue velociraptor steals Festina's jewels back and sends the cyborg's head flying into the wall, while the decapitated head flirts wildly with the cat. Ben finds out his ex Julie is back, but gets hit with a reality check seeing she found another sucker, Hervé, after he lost her by screaming furiously at a video game. Esther pops up screaming for help and drags everyone to the field, where Princess Luma sweeps the Kraho looking for wedding items and wants to kidnap Rook because she needs something blue. She rips off Festina's hand, bags half the cast, and takes off. Ben turns into Jury Rig and builds a junk motorcycle to chase her. The boy's mom snitches that Julie was the girlfriend, and the princess focuses her fury on the tennis player. Ben turns into Ball Weevil, gets swallowed by his own goo, and Julie wears the space dog-like armor. Rook slices the bug just in time for Julie to deliver a colossal overhead smash with her racket right in the bride's face. Luma flips over, accepts defeat, and bails into space. In the end, Julie tells the hero to take a hike so she can stay with her boring boyfriend, and the stretchy girl becomes the new disposable love interest. On Galvan Prime, a nerdy tour guide shows a bunch of big-headed kids the skeleton of the Omnivoracious, until Psychobus, Kyber with his mutt, and Malware crash the tour. Kyber rips a piece off for the bootleg watch, and Malware sucks the energy from the guards until only dry husks remain. Meanwhile, Ben dies of boredom in Rook's car, who picks at the protagonist's biggest wound by asking about feedback, the electric alien he used all the time. In the present, the watch humiliates Ben and spits out heat blast instead of water hazard, and poor Pakmar panics thinking they're gonna roast his ass. Out of nowhere, Ben and Rook are teleported to Galvan, where Azimuth is cornered. Ben turns into Humungosaur, plays tag with gross spiders until Azimuth pulls out a whistle and makes Kyber's dog turn into an octopus that grabs Psychobos's big crab head. Cornered, Psychobos confesses Malware invaded the planet, and Ben finally vomits up his trauma. In the past, Malware permanently deleted feedback, and a furious Ben beat the villain to a pulp. In the present, while Ben cries over spilled milk, Galvan's moon explodes in the sky. 5 minutes before the end of the world, Malware absorbs the moon's core and pops it like a party balloon. The meteor shower crashing down on Galvan is Malware himself raining down like a plague. The goo merges into a red giant, swallows Rook's gun, and almost drowns Humungosaur until the plumber ship arrives with Max, Gwen, and Kevin blasting away. Azimuth reveals the only way out is fixing a firewall, a job for Blukich and Dreba, armed with a belt, shoelaces, and spare change. Ben turns into Way Big and stops Malware with his foot, but the goo swallows him whole. While Kevin takes a stroll on the battlefield and adopts Kyber's killer dog, Ben falls into a forced therapy session inside the villain's stomach, meets his child self, and forgives himself for losing his favorite alien, which makes the watch unlock feedback. Ben blows Malware's head off, Mechamorphs rain from the sky, Azimuth hands over the Helix's energy, and feedback unleashes a massive beam that disintegrates the villain once and for all. With the universe saved, the group heads home, Kevin dragging his new dog and leaving Gwen shocked that he knows how to identify giant monster biology. Our useless protagonist is taking a walk in the woods as Shock Squatch when he bumps into the Secret Saturdays, who almost mistake the hairy alien for some random Bigfoot. Meanwhile, the lunatic Dr. Animo has resurrected Vivi Argost in a bizarre body resembling the Jersey Devil. Ben, Rook, and Zack bust into the scientist's hideout, turn his henchmen into BBQ, and fry half the cryptid army. The villain's genius goes down the drain when a giant lizard bites the antennas off his mind control helmet, making the chupacabras turn violently against their own master. Ben resorts to his beloved feedback and sucks Argost's power so hard the beast passes out on the floor like a raisin.
Sorry, dude. It kinda is.
Our hero and his partner wake up tied upside down in a warehouse full of cats, kidnapped by the crazy cat lady Nyansi Chan. When she throws the giant tigers in the watch boy's face, he turns into Upchuck and swallows the beast's whole. After sending the crazy woman to the slammer, the duo flies to the planet Peptos 11, only to take a beating from the incursion space toads, and land right in the middle of a pathetic civil war between the Perks and the Mercs. They find out Queen Rumbleton was kidnapped by Princess Atea, and completely out of options, the obese royalty activates the Omega Plan, which consists of the entire species opening their mouths and devouring their own planet until not even dust is left. Atea flees pretending she destroyed everything on purpose, while Emperor Milius is already drooling looking at a hologram of Earth. The master of incompetence thinks posing for the cameras as feedback is more important than stopping a giant chicken from stealing eggs. After getting a massive chewing out from Grandpa Max, he runs off with two useless frog scientists. They find Professor Hoakstar messing with a generator inside a floating Mr. Smoothie and get sucked into Dimension 23. There, the protagonist comes face to face with a younger, richer, and infinitely more insufferable version of himself, Ben 23, a fast food-sponsored mini bourgeois with a gold watch. After the mercenary 7-7 Tetrax and a suited-up alien named Brainstorm attack, the hero reveals that the villain is actually this dimension's Azimuth. Following a deeply hypocritical moral lecture about being a real hero rather than a digital influencer, our protagonist goes back to hug Grandpa Max, begging for more verbal humiliation. In a pathetic attempt at a prisoner transfer, the hero and his feline partner pilot a ship to Incarsakan carrying the buff squid-faced Vilgax. The ship gets shot up by Princess Atea, who got orders from the Frog Emperor to wipe Vilgax out. Vilgax swears up and down he didn't call the cavalry, seeing as the shots are aimed right at his face. Proving he has zero honor, he throws the kid at the princess and bails, but then weirdly snaps and throws himself in front of a cannon to save the boy. Then his handcuffs run out of battery. Squidface grabs the princess's gun, takes a cowardly, cheap shot at the hero, and vanishes into the vacuum of space, letting absolutely every single villain escape. The script plays with the timeline. Teenage Ben and his bratty younger self get attacked by Eon, who blows up both watches at the same time, causing a cosmic body swap. The steampunk wannabe time traveler Paradox takes an epic beating and gets his bionic arm chopped off like firewood before being dragged to the end of time. Future Gwen drags the kid version on a scavenger hunt rigged by themselves until they recover a universal navigator hidden in the mechanical arm. But Eon resurfaces, steals the toy, and opens wormholes vomiting out henchmen until both Bens synchronize their wristbands, turn into clockwork, and fire a dual energy blast that wipes the villain from existence. Time is restored, but the future version of Ben drops in announcing a time war, because you can't have 1 minute of peace. A giant pig spawns at the protagonist's door claiming the hero ate his dad. Ben turns into Echo, wrecks the beast, and, out of pure habit, destroys Mr. Bauman's car once again. The old man has a meltdown, proving the kid has always been a cancer to private property. As punishment, the boy has to deliver packages without using the watch, but Siphon thinks it's a genius idea to auction off a dwarf star, attracting Zomboso, and all the trash from Undertown. The hero hands out beatdowns in a junkyard packed with villains, and uses Topic to reveal a face so horrific the lackey craps his pants. With everything sorted, the exact same van that Way Big threw into space 5 years ago drops from the sky, crushing the old man's house, and the hero just says see ya and bails. Some useless plumbers get stranded on a planet with an atmosphere as lethal as morning breath, forcing Grandpa Max to send Ben and Rook after fresh Grackleflint venom. They rent the services of a mercenary who turns out to be just an alien duck with delusions of grandeur named Rad Dudesman. Mid-trip, the same old hippie alien shows up obsessed with protecting wild beasts, and the monster itself escapes and trashes the engine. The team realizes the creature only wants to devour the seeds the hippie is carrying, so they use this bizarre fetish as bait to lock the beast in a box. When the enemy empire docks to collect a toll, the smiling pacifist unleashes the starving monster to chew up the entire squad, while they escape by giving the fallen plumbers a healing venom bath. Sheriff Watson is about to scarf down a whole pie when incursion ships start raining down on the planet, and the little brat young one flies to Earth to warn that Ravana has gone down the drain. Up in space, the walking crustacean Dr. Psychobus and Princess Atea prep a batch of orange amber Ogia juice for mind control. When the trio steps on Ravana, they notice Rook's family is working way too fast, and even using grammatical contractions for this race of weird farmers, the ultimate sign of brainwashing. Char and the sheriff get a face full of the juice and turn into henchmen, forcing Ben to go grav-attack to pin them to the wall. Invading the tower, Ben turns into Astrodactyl and whips Dr. Psychobos until he triggers a massive explosion that breaks the hypnosis on the whole planet. But Atea escapes clinging to the last drop of the mind cream, already drooling to drop that gooey marvel straight onto Earth. The Undertown aliens pop out of the sewers like roaches, warning that the space frogs have arrived. And while Will Harang, the ultimate simp reporter, blames Ben, the Omnitrix decides to play Russian roulette. It turns him into Way Big, then a walking radioactive oven, and finally a mop of water that just splashes the reporter's face for free. Up in space, Emperor Milius, an obese frog with a god complex, breaks the shields via headbutts and kicks off the invasion. Ben and Rook crash the proto-truck head-on into the mothership's window, freeze the big toad, and Crash Hopper bounces the villain off the walls until Rook slaps the cuffs on him. But the victory is short-lived. Atea unleashes a rain of mutant Talkastars on Earth, and Ben is forced to surrender. He's locked in a pod and kicked out into the vacuum, with the reporter celebrating that humanity finally got rid of the weird teenager. While Ben floats in the vacuum like cosmic trash, the dictator frogs have already turned Earth into their playground. Gwen, Kevin, and Rook's washed-up little squad tries to smuggle weapons and fails miserably until a buff, charming frog named Bullfrag knocks out the guards. The muscular toad infiltrates the plumber's base with the team disguised as prisoners and calls Max Grandpa, revealing he's Ben. Atea gets so flustered by his charm that she flirts wildly until Gwen blasts her in the face with a spell out of pure secondhand embarrassment. Azimuth showed up in space, fixed the watch, and jammed this Gigachad frog DNA in as a gift. Ben turns into Way Big to trade punches with the colossal monsters, shoves the beast into the null void by force, and fires a laser to obliterate Milius's ship. In the end, Atea reveals her daddy-issue-fueled master plan. She loosened Ben's cuffs herself just so he would come back, beat up her dad, and hand the throne to her on a silver platter. She blackmails the heroes for her freedom, steals a gross French kiss from the protagonist before bailing, leaving Ben only worried about whether the smoothie shops survived the intergalactic humiliation. A ship of disgusting Hulex fleas plants a colonization flag on Ben's back, accidentally getting him stuck as Gravitac and forcing him to serve as a peace conference table for stuck-up felines. While the little fleas drill into his rocky guts, Rook shrinks down and destroys the microchip that was jamming the transformation. Ben then goes wrath to mash the traitor Poltroon's face in until the miserable wretch is crying for his mommy. The glutton walking with Rook is Albedo in disguise, while the real Ben rots in a cell and escapes as Nanomech stuck to a gross ketchup jar. At the warehouse, Albedo steals the polymorphic crystal and resurrects the ultimate forms to humiliate his twin with mutant spider monkeys, right until Kyber's ship drops from the ceiling and kidnaps the knocked-out Galvan brain. The useless Vreedle brothers blow their own faces off at the museum and come back cloned in the basement of the obese Ma Vreedle, who threatens to throw a giant rocket into the sun. Ben gets a beatdown from a horde of clones on a train sliced in half by a laser, but the warhead fails because the jackasses stole the part while playing mechanic. In the end, Ben's mom shows up screaming and paralyzes the giant lady with a hysterical lecture. Old man Phil comes running like you dodging bills, now a mutant energy-sucking arachnid unleashed by malware. Ben tries feedback, Frankenstrike, and Shock Squatch, but that just gives the beast more juice. It's only as Buzzshock, teaming up with the gang of living batteries, that Max arrives with the Null Void projector and ships his fake friend off to the void. Dr. Animo forces a flashback to 5 years ago, when he was riding a two-headed mutant giraffe against the Rust Bucket and aiming satellites at humanity from Mount Rushmore. In the showdown, Ben, as Upchuck, swallows the chair stuffed with technobugs, gets kicked out, and spits a gastric juice bomb that obliterates the stone faces of the mountain. Third-rate reporter Will Harang swears all crime is Ben's fault and makes a deal with Dr. Chadwick to turn aliens into humans, using a generator that, in reality, wipes every extraterrestrial from existence. After having his transformations cancelled on the spot, Ben redirects the charge straight to Harang's penthouse, turning the biggest alien hater into a gooey freak that matches his insides. A weapon theft from the plumbers themselves points to a mole, and Siphon pays a fortune for the contraband to steal the Annihilar, a doomsday device that Ben is clinically incapable of pronouncing. At the hideout, the plumber Gorvan is unmasked as the fat traitor, and the chicken henchman Liam melts, revealing it was the gooey cousin Lucy undercover the whole time, and the stolen Annihilar was still just a cheap knockoff. 5 years ago, the robot Otto made clowns out of Kevin and Arjit in the Null Void. In the present, the three bump into the scamming tin can at the Koros market. Otto escapes his cell, steals Warlord Gar's cars, and turns into a scrap metal Megazord. Ben switches to upgrade and builds his own giant robot to humiliate the villain, and Gar gives Kevin a Tadenite car so expensive no one can afford to buy it. Ben and Rook hunt Albedo through the sewers, but the useless jerk gets on the wrong ship and ends up in Kyber's private safari, dumped in the alien brush where the Watch laughs in his face and spits out Cannonbolt instead of Way Big. Kyber struts around with his demonic kitty equipped with the Nemitrix and forces a hunt until the fight against Ultimate Albedo turns into a physical humiliation fest. Ben takes a beating until he dials feedback, swallows the missile into his plugs, and fries the emo back to his bald frog form.
You are finished.
Rook and Max cuff him, believing it's over, but the joy dies in 2 seconds. Kyber emerges from the shadows petting the mutant cats and reveals the real prey, a tied-up azimuth ready for the slaughter. Albedo turns on the brain blender and sucks the old frog's gray matter into a radioactive green ball, but Ben turns into Terraspin, blows everyone away, and escapes with Grandpa Max holding the intellect orb. In a burst of questionable genius, Ben triggers the entire base's self-destruct and flees in the ships, which crash land on Earth, tearing up the asphalt. Albedo copies Gravitac and uses Ben as his personal punching satellite, until Ben goes pesky dust and puts the meathead to sleep. At Billion's tower, Azimuth falls onto the Watch, Ben turns into blocks and drains the villain's mental charge, giving birth to Atomix, a walking nuclear power plant that kicks Ultimate Spider Monkey into the stratosphere. Azimuth fixes the Omnitrix, fueled purely by spite, and leaves Albedo trapped in the body of an 11-year-old Ben, crying on the floor with a full diaper. Ben is at the diner complaining that it's been 2 weeks since an intergalactic maniac tried to rip his head off, when purple clouds cover the sky. He rushes out thinking it's the apocalypse, but it's just a third-rate street circus. Rook goes in to investigate, gets a pie to the face, and comes out shooting at his own partner like a zombie clown. Disgusting fake teeth bite the entire city, turning even Grandpa Max into a zombie, while Zombozo sucks up the crowd's fear and gets absurdly buff. But when he comes in thirsty to swallow the alien's fear, the coward wets himself in such a pathetic way that the energy itself reverses, destroys the evil machine, and the clown flees to space in a rocket. Our dear Gwen tried to have a normal life, college student by day and lucky girl by night, when Ben and Rook show up in a supremely tacky van wanting a campus tour. The group crashes a class by a weird professor named Zagliv, who Rook swears is Vilgax, spelled backwards, but they rip off her fake hair, and she's just genuinely bald. At that moment, the little nerd student Dante reveals his pale, dark star face and kidnaps Gwen to suck Legerdemain's mana dry. Ben figures out that without mana, the wannabe vampire has nothing to swallow, turns into Ghost Freak, penetrates deep into the jerk's body, and uses the villain as a puppet, freeing his cousin. The glowing piece of trash gets thrown into a cop car driven by Charmcaster. A portal vomits the real Zisker from the shadows, and the insufferable guy still gets an honorary degree to call himself Dr. Tennyson for the rest of his life. We meet Bill Gax, a human plumber who, by cosmic whim, is a spitting image of Vilgax. When holograms of the real Squid Face pop out of the sewers promising to extinguish humanity, Ben activates prejudice mode and accuses the poor guy. Siphon bumps into the plumber, starts kissing his ass thinking it's his old master, and takes the order to make easy money as a divine sign to rob a bank. Then a squid monster jumps out of the toilet at Grandpa Max's shop, and hundreds spawn in the street thirsty for chaos. The useless protagonist turns into Bullfrag, lures the herd of squids to a construction site where the real Vilgax shows up out of nowhere, orders Siphon to lead the creatures, and bails like a coward. Ben turns into Snarrow and ties everyone up, and Siphon ends up locked away, proving to be the biggest simp in the galaxy as he whispers that the master's secret is safe. In London, Ben's closeted crush, Kai, and her grandfather Wes discover Dr. Jekyll's potion, but the Forever Knights crash the party, and the schizophrenic Chadwick steals the liquid and kidnaps the old man to find a magic sword. Ben crosses the ocean swearing he's not simping, while Rook rubs the truth in his face. The clues lead to the bottom of the River Thames, where the legendary Excalibur is stuck in the stone. Chadwick downs the low-budget Hulk potion, turns into a buff gorilla, and fails to pull the weapon, so he threatens to kill everyone if Ben doesn't pull it out. Our hero resorts to Humungosaur, and proving that brains aren't his strong suit, rips out the entire rock with the sword stuck in it. The place floods, and in the end, Kai rewards the simp with a peck on the cheek while Ben grumbles that women are weirder than aliens. At the plumber's base, Dr. Animo hallucinates with his stuffed animals in his cell until a bizarre toy with a human head talks back, opens the cage, and initiates a jailbreak, clairvoyantly predicting that Ben's broken watch will glitch. And right on cue, Ben turns into Upgrade only to take an EMP blast from the toy. The mad scientist crashes into the forest and comes face to face with his future self, now a buff monkey who came to fetch Project Ark, a Noah's Ark full of DNA, but the mysterious Spanner drops in handing out flying kicks. Ben hits the jackpot by turning into Gutrot, an alien who wins by passing gas through his body, and the two villains start beating each other up when they discover the legendary DNA belongs to a damn spoiled poodle. Gutrot sprays an amnesia gas in their faces, and Spanner drags the future monkey back to his timeline. The useless hero's ship crashes in a Nortransel, a frustrated goth's nightmare, and the bizarre city monsters think Ben is the real freak. A third-rate mummy, Cthulhu, kidnaps the crew. The plumber dog scout saves the incompetent hero and secures the part for the ship. Meanwhile, Ziscari crawls out of the wrecked ship and sucks Dr. Victor's soul just to go back to being the king of the space emos, but Ben turns into NRG and drops a radioactive flashbang so bright it melts the ghost.
Not sounding so evil now, are you?
In the end, Ben drops the damn part and breaks it, proving that the real monster in this universe is his stupidity. A fully unhinged Charmcaster invades Ziscari's castle demanding the Alpha Rune, but the ghost hits the screw it button and teleports her straight to the ship's bathroom, where Ben is having a hysterical meltdown over a pimple. Alliance forged. They storm the fortress and get beaten up by living magic pumpkins, while Swampfire's voice cracks in alien puberty, and he does absolutely nothing. Ziscare returns the completely sucked dry rune and kicks them all out like trash. Then Charmcaster sniffs the rune's magic, goes crazy, and becomes a fighting machine. But Swampfire hits full puberty, gets a new design, and Rook teleports the crazy witch back to Ledger Domain. The metamorphosis clears up Ben's face. Ziscare uses the rune to resurrect Lord Trancel, a blood-sucking space vampire who treated Dr. Victor's people like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Trancel spits out flying parasites and brainwashes Rook, Rad, and Scout. Only Hobble escapes purely because he's covered in a slime that not even the parasites want. Ben turns into Vampire and builds his own gang of puppets by throwing parasites onto Victor and Cthulhu. An all-out brawl erupts in the castle. Victor remembers he has dignity and betrays the ghost, and Ben turns into Atomix, creating a sphere of light so absurdly hot it disintegrates the scare and toasts the big vampire. In the end, Victor locks Trancel in a coffin and tosses the space trash straight into the orbit of the Honor system's sun, guaranteeing a fatal tan. We meet a useless version of our protagonist, a teenager with no space watch who rescues a kitten and already thinks he's a hero. The boredom ends when a dark, emo version of himself, Bad Ben as Ghost Freak, starts hunting him with Albedo and Benzaro, and the original Ben swings down like Spider Monkey to save his useless hide. Paradox drops the multiverse bomb on the table. There are infinite Bens, but this is the only loser who never touched an Omnitrix. Vilgax and Eon show up wanting an army of evil Bens, but Squidface pulls the ultimate betrayal. He activates a Chronosapien time bomb and wipes out all the Bens across all realities. Before turning into cosmic dust, the original Ben sacrifices his own existence and slaps his Omnitrix onto onto No-Watch Ben's wrist, while Paradox yanks the shell-shocked kid into a pocket dimension. Paradox and the last Ben kick off the greatest time heist in history, going back to the original timeline to shove Kid Ben down the cliff into the crater where the watch was, because destiny isn't magic, it's just a time-traveling teenager pushing you. Then they assemble the Multiverse Avengers, recruiting Gwen 10, the arrogant brat Ben 23, and Ben 10,000. Back at the Apocalypse's ground zero, the alternate Ben turns into clockwork, rewinds the entire explosion, and brings everyone who was erased back from the dead, even handing the Omnitrix back to the original Ben. Then the massacre begins. The aliens completely wreck the Intergalactic Conqueror, and No-Watch Ben finishes it with a humiliating kick to the squid's face, proving that even a useless guy can have his moment of glory. Ben is on a double date and prefers his video game over Esther's charm, but the Omnitrix trolls him and turns him into Wrath, who Nyansi-chan instantly tames like a pet. Luma and Atea arrive on Earth, smashing each other's faces to decide who gets to put a leash on Ben. He finally rubs two brain cells together and tells them they don't need a husband to rule, and the princesses leave trading venomous jabs. An imposter poses as Ben Tennyson and fools the negative IQ Undertown in a trashy reality show, while the scammer monkey Simeon makes the fake Ben sign away a plot of land visible from space. Then the cosmic repo man Collectimus shoves the entire Earth into an acrylic cube. Ben tries to bribe him with smoothies and offers weapons of mass destruction, but what really gets the villain going is a mint condition. Ben 10 t-shirt with no food stains. Billy Billions recruits some aging losers to form the Vengers, phony vigilantes focused on massaging their own egos and humiliating the protagonist. Ben wipes the floor with the three idiots and declares himself retired. But putting three narcissists together goes wrong, and the nutjobs start fighting over who gets to help a little old lady until they're firing missiles at each other, getting exposed on live TV and sent off to jail. Hired mercenaries hunt down the furry loan shark Argit, and the mysterious Spanner comes out of nowhere to save useless Ben's hide more than once. The disgusting truth? Argit swallowed a Tekadon robot cube thinking it was a snack and vomits up a giant killer robot in Siphon's bar. Ben turns into Topik and terrifies the rat on such a brutal level that he regurgitates the entire army and becomes an untouchable god. The Rooters, a bunch of Black Ops cosplayers led by Proctor Cervantes, invade the plumber's base like they own the place looking for Kevin. Ben tries to pick a fight, but Grandpa Max tells him to sit down and shut up, while Cervantes scours the team's minds and finds nothing. When the invaders crash the reunion with Kevin, the Osmosian headbutts Cervantes, leeches the villain's mental powers like a pathetic loser, and remembers the past. The Null Void was a clandestine lab where Cervantes spliced kids' DNA, proving that Osmosians aren't even real aliens, just a science fair project gone wrong.
To mix together humans and aliens.
In the ensuing all-out war, Ben turns into Gravitack and floats everyone around like party balloons. Cervantes runs away with his tail between his legs, and Kevin shoves his red laser into Argit to restore the rodent's memories. A space pig threatens to eat Ben's dad in a baguette, but Diamond Head cools off the butcher shop. The Galvin Luli shows up spitting slime, looking for a part that Blukich and Driba left behind at Area 51 decades ago. In a flashback nobody asked for, young Max disobeys military orders so he doesn't blow up the frog duo, burying the phony dictator Benevolon's robot under a jet. In the present, Benevolon resurfaces. Ben smashes the watch and turns into Vampire, almost frying in the sun until Four Arms takes over and throws the part, which is turned into a time bomb, at the robot, vaporizing 40 airplanes. Two meathead criminals melt the prison doors with their own sweat, and the toxic fumes fry Rook's brain, turning him into an insufferable gym bro with a tacky van. The fugitives head to an underground tournament, and Rook drags Ben to the arena using police work as an excuse. Ben makes the most pathetic choice possible. He turns into the worst, an indestructible ball of fat, and lets the enemy punch him in the face for 3 hours until passing out. Rook hits Ben with a cheap shot betrayal, and in the finals, he and Fistrix strike bodybuilder poses until the crowd throws trash at them. Festina steals the trophy and aims at Rook, but can't bring herself to shoot the pretty boy with the ridiculous hair and surrenders. Rook crowns himself champion and arrests everyone. Ben is whining that the purple smoothie hasn't tasted right since he recreated the universe. A pint-sized space lawyer, Chadsmith, shows up releasing criminals right in Ben's face, and then giant gods descend to sue the kid for universal piracy, dragging him to an intergalactic court. The gods force Ben to sip the smoothie in front of everyone, and he breaks, confessing to the cosmic crime. Chadsmith appeals for trial by combat. Ben turns into Alien X, infinitely clones himself into a cosmic beatdown brawl, and swallows the gladiator into a black hole. Cleared of all charges, the gods are fine find 5 measly coins of loose change, and the short-stack lawyer frees all the villains again, sending the astronomical bill straight to the hero. Out in the country, Alan turns down Kevin's help, but when a bird woman breaks in to kidnap the kid, Kevin absorbs solid wood to protect him, proving he switched sides. Gwen figures out her boyfriend's plan, and they rescue the rejected mutants, whose memories were tampered with by the bald-headed Cervantes. Kevin invades the black hole alone, but Ben ruins everything by busting in as Atomix, and Cervantes turns on the mental microwave to brainwash the mutants. Ben resorts to feedback in Alien X, but Cervantes whispers in Kevin's ear, reminding him who shattered his mind, and the kid snaps, turning into the true villain and beating Ben to a pulp like a giant warrior chicken. Humiliated, Ben flees through the null void while Kevin and the bald guy forge a sinister alliance. The pathetic team flees from Psycho Kevin through the null void and runs face first into a bloodthirsty monster. Argit throws up the past. Cervantes was terrified the Watch Kid would destroy the universe and put together a death squad with Kevin as his secret weapon. In a flashback, young Kevin tries to snatch Ben's tool, gets zapped, and turns into a freak. In the present, Ben sprays pheromones to attract the monsters as a distraction, but Kevin intercepts and drags the hogtied hero to the execution room. In a plot twist not even the universe saw coming, Kevin frees his little buddy, grabs Cervantes, and crushes his forehead. He was acting the whole time to fry the mind control chip once and for all. The mutants get their sanity back, and the squad bails from the null void in style, leaving the bald guy to play with the starving monsters as the portal closes forever. Clyde, the hero's useless nerd cousin, shoves his arm into a stolen exo-armor thinking it's a glowing sock, dubs himself Clyde 5, and flies off out of control, blasting kids' balloons with lasers. The protagonist gets his ass handed to him by the destruction machine until the idiot finally does the unthinkable, reads the damn manual, and knocks out the feathery Liam. Conservative boomer Master Kundo chases Char all the way to Earth, thinking alien education is heresy, humiliates our hero, and snaps Rook's weapon in half. Meanwhile, the protagonist cycles through 4 arms, Buzzshock, and Wrath in a sadistic and pointless attempt to rip off the youth's tail by force. In the end, Rook deflects the old man's attack into a vat of chemicals, and the tech-hating boomer wakes up as a hideous cyborg. The kid's tail falls off on its own out of sheer boredom, and he christens himself Rook Ben. The skull-faced sorcerer Hex is now a college professor, but his unstable niece Charmcaster turns him into a stone totem to use as a magical GPS to find the Staff of Ages. In the middle of the heavy magic brawl, a stray spell deletes Kevin's indestructible car from existence. Gwen recovers the Stonehead, disarms the crazy witch, and kicks her back to Legerdemain. Flashbacks reveal that Grumpy Bauman hid the aquatic alien Sheelane in a mine, fueling their romance every 5 years with Element X, a substance capable of blowing up a solar system. Vulcanus shows up to steal the girl and the cargo, but the protagonist swaps the full container for an empty one, and the villain blows himself up into cosmic dust.
Almost blown to bits. After that tiny bit of Element X blew up.
In the end, the old man finally asks Sheelane to marry him, proving that a grumpy convenience store owner has more luck in love than you do. Spanner pops out of the future to play forced Cupid between the protagonist and Kai, while the invisible Subdora steals the 12,000-year-old Puma Punku jewel. The hero rips open a bag of chips and covers the thief in cheese dust, revealing her form in the most humiliating way possible. In the end, the real thief is Spanner himself, who slyly swipes the ball and hands the core over to the Time Master Maltruant. Fist Trick hijacks trucks using holographic masks of the protagonist's face, so the kid infiltrates the gym as Wildvine, earning respect by lifting weights with his feet and nearly blowing his cover by begging for a meatball sub over the radio. After getting blasted onto a space station and going into freefall, the watch times out and he turns into the glorious Molestache, crushing the villain's truck with his colossal mustache. The beloved sandwich is ironically served to Fist Trick in prison. The capitalist rat Argit sets up a shoddy security firm with the scam artist Monkey Simeon as the boss, and is obviously betrayed. After a Fast and Furious-worthy chase where Ben merges with his motorcycle as upgrade, it turns out the protagonist finally used his brain and swapped the top-secret box. The real cargo delivered to the Lowoden family, a lost baby being trafficked in a metal jar. The protagonist's mom drags Ben and Rook to dinner at the house of the galaxy's most wanted criminal, Ma Vreedle, who serves radioactive slop. The Vreedle family reunion turns into absolute chaos in Bellwood, with Ma even telling Vilgax to shut up and get lost. dumbass Pa steals his wife's jewels but blows up his own ship again, leaving Rook drooling over the vaporized delinquent, and Ben realizing his mom desperately needs normal friends. Our lazy hero drops his video game when Dimension 23 Ben spawns in the living room. The spoiled brat swallowed his own mentor Azimuth along with a plant monster. Called in to stop Exoskull and Subdora, they get brutally beaten, but Goop's sticky trail acts as a GPS and leads them to the hideout, where they bump into the cyborg Maltruant. A weapon explosion triggers the time gear and spits the two into a post-apocalyptic wasteland where everyone wears leather. Ruling there is Mad Ben, a closeted Vilgax fanboy, who turns into Diamond Head and beats the duo down, except Mad Ben himself hands the key on a silver platter to Maltruant, who freezes the poor guy's watches and escapes through a portal to restart the time war, leaving the idiots at the mercy of Upchuck, who is ready to vomit debris all over them. Chained up like a mangy dog, our useless hero digs holes for Mad Ben's ego until Dr. Psychobos unleashes an electric shock and mid-zap, steals the keys to a truck. On the run, they hide in a junkyard where Psychobos plays watchmaker and fixes the Omnitrixes. Ben turns into the walking Lego blocks and the brat turns into 4 arms to give water to the thirsty background characters. But Mad Ben shows up as way big to squash the rebels like ants. The ultimate clutch comes when Ben turns into Nanomech, flies through the gaps in his armor, and unloads lasers until the dictator drops dead. Seeing his incompetent boss down, Rook betrays him, and when Psychobos reveals he sabotaged the watches to blow up in their faces, the Bens turn into gray matter and brainstorm to defuse the bomb, right as Professor Hoakstar and the original Rook park an interdimensional Mr. Smoothie and rescue the two idiots. In a pointless flashback, the brats wreck Mr. Bauman's car, and the old man runs from the light like an anemic vampire. Underground, they find Kevin mining corrodium for Zascara, who shoves ectonorites into the adults. Ben turns into Upgrade and shoots lasers at the bastard. Cooper shuts down the portal, and the suction swallows the ghosts. But the watch times out, and Ben lets Kevin slip into the null void. In the end, the fake Kevin was just Lucy messing with everyone's faces. Kyber breaks into the plumber's base and steals the Nemitrix like a space pickpocket, and his luck only turns when he finds Skurd, a parasite slime that creates weapons by manipulating alien DNA and sticks to his body to hunt the hero. They clash. Ben turns into Heat Blast and takes a humiliating beating when Skurd hardens Kyber with Crabdozer's shell. But as soon as Ben turns into Humungosaur, the slime realizes the kid's DNA menu is way bigger and shamelessly ditches Kyber. Ben scatters the space Lego on the ground, and the big monster cries, stepping on it barefoot, providing the perfect opening for Rook to throw the villain in the cage. Stuck with the slime glued to his wrist like gum on a shoe, our hero sits down and cries. The useless protagonist and his furry partner plunge into a hole, and Exoskull smashes their vehicles into a wall, revealing a nest of Time Beast eggs. Instead of picking them up, the kid turns into Feedback to toy with the criminal Subdora. A beast hatches with the power to age everything to dust, and Feedback's electricity hitting its magic freezes all of Bellwood in time. Paradox and Future Ben clean up the mess and reveal Eon, who furiously hatches a beast himself. Eon escapes with 2 eggs to Maltruant, but Ben reverts the loose monster back into an egg, and Paradox closes this bizarre loop. While Kai fakes intelligence with a map in Dos Santos, the hero and his partner spawn from the future on time cycles. The Watch Kid is already calling the poor girl the future Mistress Tennyson, and she boils with rage while Skurd gags. He tries Skurd's translator, but vomits up Spanish so broken it traumatizes an old lady. He goes Accelerate, finds the Temple of the Sky, and carries Kai up into the air, where she plants a kiss on his lips.
Hey! Look! Thank you.
A Stone Guardian takes down Blitzwolfer until Skurd saves the day with a sonic megaphone, and another is a robot controlled by the grumpy frog, Ujin. Paradox explains that the temple hides pieces of an artifact, and when Exoskull invades for the part, the hero turns into Wrath, who speaks fluent Spanish and finishes off the cyborg with fire before the villain escapes with the stolen spring. Our magic nerd dresses up as Lucky Girl, but gets distracted by fans and is cornered by Charmcaster, who turns her into a statue and tosses her into a leather bag full of villains. The hero invades the library. The goth girl sucks the magic juice out of the janitor Beezle, the greatest master of magic who dropped everything to sweep floors, and turns into a dragon. The cousin draws a rune on the bag with lipstick, and when the villain shoves her claw inside, the trap sucks the dumb goth into her own bag, stuck and screaming. Crazy Yetta pulls a GTA, robbing a bank and throwing a tank in everyone's faces. In space, Kundo, Rook's former master, now a junkyard cyborg, hacks the base. Max infiltrates through the sewer, and Skurd flushes Walkatrot down the toilet with a plunger. Roebucket sacrifices himself to seal the reactor, and everyone cries until Max casually mentions mentions the tin can has thousands of backups. Our hero runs whining to Azimuth's lab to scrape the Skurd slime off his watch, while Vilgax and Albedo loot a museum for Malware's remains, proving that recycling is essential for a broke villain. Vilgax fuses the scrap to his body and becomes a walking death trap, while Albedo plays the Galvanian conqueror. Ben turns into Diamond Head and takes a punch so monstrous, he flies face first into another planet. In the end, Vampire shoves the space squid into the warp core, petrifying Vilgax into a block of hardened slime, and Albedo becomes a space janitor demanding sunscreen. Ben is scratching his junk on the couch until the interdimensional host Zenith kidnaps him for a sick dating reality show where the prize is the tragic title of Mistress Tennyson. In the end, totally cucked, he slips on a banana peel, falls face first into Kai, and runs away when She-Worse demands to be the next one to lick his flesh. In the distant future, a senile Dr. Animo tries to break down a door with a mechanical bug, but the mysterious spanner pops out of nowhere and handcuffs him like a petty bakery thief. And the vigilante is revealed to be Ken, Ben and Kai's son, who immediately has his watch confiscated by his authoritative mother. At headquarters, Grandpa Max's farewell mood is interrupted by the arrival of the new president of Earth, who, by a cruel joke of fate, is Argit, the ultimate deadbeat. While everyone sucks up to the suited-up rodent, the sun lets out a magnetic fart that shuts down the base, and Exoskull discovers that the real star was around Argit's neck, shoving the jewel into his own body. Maltruant abuses time cheats and beats up the whole family, until Ken brings in the teenage version of his dad from the past. Skurd equips a diamond head helmet for a headbutt that shuts down the big guy, but the villain freezes everyone again, betrays his ally, and escapes riding a monster to rewrite the universe. The heroes run over the villain's chariot in the time stream and crash into the 18th century right in front of the damn George Washington. Young Vilgax shows up demanding a time bomb, and the watch glitches, turning Ben into a pint-sized mustachioed rodent, Molestache. But Skurd converts the mustaches into flaming maces that batter the squid face, while Washington fries the ship with an energized axe. Maltruant flees into the void before space-time even existed. The heroes crash into an extra-dimensional ship and discover that the creators of universes are giant smoothie cups. The villain throws his bomb into the divine machine, creating a starving black hole, but the protagonist resurfaces as feedback, absorbing the Big Bang explosion into his own body, before vomiting the primordial energy right into Maltruant's face, pulverizing the walking Swiss watch. Skurd drops off his arm to spread his DNA across the new cosmos. Paradox warns that the idiot will be stuck in an eternal loop, getting beaten up forever, and Ben, bored after holding the universe in his hands, drags the team on an endless road trip through space.